Hi, kamusta everyone? Welcome to another session brought to you by Azure User Group Manila. My name is Marilag Dimatulak. I am the organizer of Azure User Group Manila, and I'm so super excited today because some of my Filipino friends who are passionate about technology, about Azure, are joining me today for this special meetup session. And today we're going to talk about our favorite Azure technology. And then we're also going to be talking about the stories, our stories as female or Filipinas working in tech all over the world. So I hope that you will enjoy the show. But first of all, I'd like to introduce you to our group if it's the first time for you to attend one of our sessions. This is Azure User Group Manila. We are based all over the world. I'm actually from Denmark, but I have also a team in Manila, so I go there as often as I can. Not at the moment, unfortunately, but we started Azure User Group Manila about 3-4 years ago, I think, and we've had a couple of live events over there. But right now we're sticking to online events. Of course, this is, I think, the second or third online event that we're hosting. And this is the first time that we're streaming it live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're watching there, thank you for coming. And just a couple of reminders. If you want to follow us, if you want to get involved with our community, please do follow at Azure Manila on Twitter. And we also have a Facebook group called Azure User Group Manila. And then, of course, we have the meetup group also called the same. So we normally post our events on Meetup, but then we also share it in our Facebook group. And then you're always welcome to get in touch with us over Twitter because we don't normally use Meetup for communication. So we just use that for posting events. So if you're not a member yet, please do check it out so that, because the more the merrier. Also for today's event, which is called Filipina Developers Talk About Our Favorite Azure Technology. On the right, you can see a QR code that would link to a feedback page. Please do send us your feedback so that we can improve our sessions, and that also for our speakers to know if this has been an interesting meetup for you, and if there are other topics that you would like to learn just around Azure. So as I have mentioned, I'm super excited that my friends, Adrienne, Angelica, Jonah, myself are here together. And also later for the talk show, one of my colleagues, Arla, is also joining us to, like I said, share our stories and talk about our challenges. So I hope you get to stay for the entire meetup. So the flow would be that we have 4 tech lightning talks, each lasting around 20 minutes. And we have time for question and answer, about 5 minutes or less in between each sessions. So what you can do is that you can just simply type your comments or your questions on the chat box on YouTube and on Facebook. Just a reminder that if you're on Facebook right now, you have to just approve or add a StreamYard or give a StreamYard some permission so that we can see your name or your profile picture. If you're not comfortable with that, that's also okay. Then you will just be anonymous. But feel free to engage with us and be interactive. We will be watching the channels so that we can see your questions. We might not be able to address all your questions for today, but our speakers would, of course, be going through your questions on the chat box so that they can maybe answer that later on, or of course you can also get in touch with them in their social media accounts. Please do submit your feedback, like I said, at the end of the meetup. And I really hope that everybody follows a code of conduct, which basically I can summarize to just please respect everyone, respect our speakers, and then respect also the audience. And please, common sense, what to write on their chat box. So just be very nice. And then if you're watching, if you care, please share this event using Azure Manila hashtag and Filipinas in Tech, because like I said, this is a very special event. We're all Filipinas here showing our passion for technology. So I think we are ready for our first session today. I'm really happy to introduce her. I've met her maybe no, just a couple of months ago in Stockholm in a conference, a .NET conference where she was talking about a lot of really great tech stuff together with me. So I'm so happy that she agreed again to join us today to share her knowledge. So let me just invite uh, Adrienne Tackett on the stage.
Hello, kumusta?
Hi, mabuti. So Adrienne Tackett, she's based in Las Vegas right now, and she is currently the developer advocate for MongoDB. She's also a LinkedIn learning instructor, which is very cool. I've seen some of your videos on Azure, and if you guys are interested, go on LinkedIn and find her there. She has a really amazing content for Azure, and she's also the author of Python for Kids. Is that correct? When did you write that, by the way?
I wrote that mga last year, so published last year.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing. I have always wanted to write a book.
You can
So
do it.
that's really inspiring.
A lot of
Adrienne,
work, but worth it.
I can imagine. So thanks for joining us today again. This is our second time together for Azure User Group Manila meetup. And I think we're going to be seeing each other in um, the virtual Azure Community Day. I saw the one
Yes,
that got postponed to the end of July, I think, like 29th of July. I'm not sure about the date. I'll have to check it out. But yeah, so we're going to be seeing each other again there,
that's right.
hopefully.
Yeah, we'll be talking there too.
Yes, we do talk a lot, Adrian and I sometimes. Last time I think we did a show, it lasted 4 hours. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes for today. But I'm happy that you're here. So what are you going to be talking about?
Well, I wanted to talk about my favorite tech on Azure, which was DevOps, but of course, I just checked the status. There is an outage right now, so I may not be
Oh,
able to do my demo. So I'm just gonna quickly switch, and I'm gonna pull up one of my other talks that I did for a different talk, a different conference, but it will still work. So I'll just do that instead. So I'll be
wow.
talking about Azure DevOps.
Wow, I also love Azure DevOps,
Mhm.
something that we use every day,
Mhm.
also with our customers. So I would love to hear about that. Are you
Sweet.
ready to share?
Let me get going here. Share screen. Let's share this. Ready. Okay. So, um, so just to prove, I was wondering, I wanted to show you all. I wanted to go through and do a little demo of Azure DevOps if you haven't seen it before. But you'll see here, I get an issue here, and I know that I'm not requesting anything at the moment, but I double check, and there is an issue for US with pipelines here. Not sure if you're seeing my screen. Let me double check. Here. There you
Yeah,
go.
we can see it
My
perfectly.
delay lang. Okay. So, okay. Sorry, it's going to be switching tabs very quick. But yeah, so there's some sort of outage, but that's okay. We'll go into this quick talk I had prepared for a different conference, and I'll just quickly go up into Azure DevOps. Let's present here. Okay, so as Marilag said, I'm Adrienne Taka. I'm a senior developer advocate at MongoDB, and I want to talk to you today about Azure DevOps, specifically how to get up and running with it. So, as developers, we have a lot of different parts that we sometimes manage, especially if we're on smaller teams. We kind of have to wear many hats. We may not have a dedicated DevOps team and a dedicated testing team. Sometimes we have to do all of that, ourselves. And one of the reasons that I love Azure DevOps is that one, I had to learn it and create our own automated pipeline as devs on our small team. And at first, I was very, very intimidated. I said, "Oh, I just want to focus on building my features and coding or fixing a bug." Like we didn't know anything about having to deploy. We had a very manual process, and it was taking a very, very long time because our process wasn't automated. I'm sure many of you can relate if it's not already automated in some fashion. That essentially deploying to production was maybe copying and pasting at the worst case scenario, or in the best case scenario, it was maybe connecting to an SFTP and then copying the files over that way. And that's how we were doing it previously. But my team, we said enough is enough. Not only were we going too slow, it was affecting our performance as a team. Management kept saying, where are all these new features? Where are all these bug fixes? Why is it taking so long? This is affecting the client. They're not seeing the value of everything we're doing. Meanwhile, our dev team was continuing to work on these things. We were knocking off our tasks one by one and doing it quickly, but they weren't seeing the value of it because we would bulk up all of the things that we have fixed, and we would wait for a very, very big deployment, sometimes once a month, sometimes even longer than that. So even though we may have fixed a bug within an hour that we got that day, the customers wouldn't see it. The clients of our platform wouldn't see it until very, very long after, whenever it was that we deployed. So this sparked conversation with our team to say we need to do better. And so what came out of that was a very streamlined process using Azure DevOps for our continuous integration and our continuous deployment processes. And so this is what I wanted to share with you today, kind of the what were the questions that we asked, what did we think to ourselves and discuss with our team to make sure we built the best possible automated workflow for us and for our development flow. So that all starts with what's in a pipeline. When we ask ourselves, the better question, what's in a good pipeline? Because there are processes that are automated, but if they have bad steps and terrible steps, you're just automating a bad process, which is not necessarily what we want to do. We want a good pipeline. And so we've discussed this with our team, and it came down to a few things. So the first one is branch policies. So when we discussed our branches and we discussed how we worked as a development team, we saw the number one thing, or the first thing we knew we needed to do, is protect our branches. Why? Well, we needed to decide on a branching workflow as a team. So we only had about three devs, actual devs working on our platform, but all of us came from kind of different backgrounds. One of us was used to just, wild, wild west, we'll just merge directly onto the main branch. Others were a little bit more careful. We would actually branch off and follow more of a Git flow style, but we needed to consolidate that as a team and decide, okay, what is the way that we're going to do this? And what works best with our specific platform, which was split into 5 different modules, and what works best with just our knowledge and how frequently we wanted to deploy. So that was something we needed to share. Let's hide this. The next thing we discussed about branches is we want to limit the merge types if we can. So once we decided on the workflow that we wanted for our CI and CD processes, something that was really awesome about Azure DevOps was that you can choose what kind of merge types you can do into specific branches. So for our particular case, whenever we would work on a bug or start on a new feature, we would branch off and make either a hotfix or a bug fix branch or a feature branch. And once we were ready to merge, we've decided that into our dev branch, we wanted to do squash commits, squash everything that we have done in our feature branch, and then make that just a single commit on our development branch. That works because as we're working on these things, sometimes I might commit 2 or 3 times. Other times a feature might have way more commits than that, but we didn't necessarily want all of those commits in our dev history. We wanted it to be cleaner. So we would take any of our feature branches and bug branches, squash them into a single one, and then have that merge into our dev branch. Now that was for merging on the dev branch. For the main branch, we wanted something different. We didn't want squash merge, right? Because we've already kept it clean in our dev branch, we just wanted a straight up merge into our main branch. But these are the kinds of policies that we knew we wanted to have, and we saw that Azure DevOps provided that. Next thing that we knew, we wanted to keep main branches free from direct commits. Again, we all were part of teams where we just kind of had rockstar engineers or wild solo rogue engineers who would just directly commit onto the production branch, and nobody wanted that. We all know that's a terrible idea unless it's your own side project. But whenever you're working on a team, it almost always causes problems, and it almost always is the cause of bugs. So we again wanted a policy to enforce that could never happen, and Azure DevOps again is another thing that could give us that. And then so there were just a couple other things as a team that we decided that aren't necessarily Azure DevOps specific, but something we knew would be best practice and something we wanted to enforce on our team. So one of those is avoiding committing dependencies. So I'm sure you've all done it before. I've done it myself. When I first started working with node modules, I didn't know. I committed all of that into my GitHub repo, and that blows up the size of the repo. We don't need that in our repo. So it was those kinds of things that we stripped out, kept our branches very, very clean, and also minimized the size as much as possible. And finally, we also said we need to remove all these config files. A lot of our old deployment processes relied on this, and this was kind of okay because we were doing it manually. But now, because we wanted it to be repeatable, we wanted it to scale, we wanted it to be automated, we didn't want to have to deal with it. We needed to remove these kinds of things in our branches. And it makes sense, right? Config files usually hold things like user-specific strings or connection strings or things that might vary between teammate to teammate. So if you check that in or you commit that to source control, and then your next teammate pulls down that version, well, they're always going to have a conflict because you checked in your specific configuration file. So it's those kinds of things we wanted to take out of our branches and see if we could put them in something like Azure DevOps. So that was the very start of us discussing what was in a good pipeline, right? We knew that our branch policies had to be solid, and we had to agree on what those policies were. The next one were the pull request policies. So we wanted to make those strong, really, really strong, make them enforced, and made sure they had the policies that we wanted. So what were the things we were looking for? Well, again, we wanted to set a minimum number of reviewers. We wanted, since our team was very small, we said we wanted at least the entire team's approval before a pull request could be merged. We wanted to enforce that all of our pull requests were linked to work items or ticket numbers. Now, because our team was fully on the Microsoft ecosystem, we were also using Azure boards, and that's where we would have our tickets. And we because we were integrated already, we said every pull request, it was so easy to just put the ticket number of the actual ticket in our Azure boards that related to the code that was in this pull request. And so we made that mandatory. It was giving us an extra piece of confidence that whatever code we were about to merge actually is tied to a ticket or is a vetted thing that we needed. It wasn't just some random code that we decided to write. Running pre-builds. So this is something we never could do and something that was always a pain manually if we even tried to attempt it. We knew we wanted this because this would catch a lot of those errors that we would only find after the fact. Having this kind of run through and seeing what would happen once we actually merge was super, super helpful. And we knew that we wanted this. And lo and behold, Azure DevOps had this. And akin to setting minimum number of reviewers, we wanted to auto-add reviewers. This is something that we do every day, right? We always look at pull requests or an open pull request, and even if it's maybe 2 or 3 clicks at a time, it's still 2 or 3 clicks that you have to do every single time. So that was something that we knew that we could automate, and we definitely took advantage of that in Azure DevOps. And lastly, check for comment resolutions. So this one was very important because as we went through our code review and you're going through and you possibly see something that might be problematic or you want to get an answer from the dev on a particular part of the code. Something that was really nice about Azure DevOps is that if you left a comment on something, you could require that the developer had to either respond back to the comment and acknowledge that they saw it, or resolve it by code. So in other words, if you left a comment and said, oh, you are missing something here, or oh, you need to refactor this, then we were not allowed to merge that. There's something that needs to be fixed. And so what would happen before is, even if you had a comment and you left something in your code review, because someone has already opened a pull request and possibly 1 out of 3 devs have already approved it, because there was at least 1 approval on there, it could still be merged in. And we didn't want that. We wanted this kind of enforcement so that all of the comments that we left for our peers were actually acknowledged and taken care of. So I want to show you, and I'm actually happy I did this. So it's not working right now. As I showed you earlier, there's an outage. But I want to show you how sweet this is. I have a project here, and I want to show you all of those things that I have mentioned, everything that we discussed as a team, all of those things we wanted for our workflow. We at first were intimidated. We're like, that sounds like a lot. We have a lot of things to get set up, and we have a lot of things to configure, and it almost intimidated us in the beginning. But I want to show you here that Azure DevOps makes it easy. So you'll see here, I'm easily creating a minimum number of reviewers on the branch policies for my dev branch. I want to reset the code views. Here's the linked work items. Here's the check for comment resolution. And here you can limit the merge types, like I mentioned before. All of this is to say, all of these things that I just discussed, Azure DevOps makes it really easy, because it's either a simple dialog here, where you just pick the branch that you want these things to apply to, or they're checkboxes. And it was actually much easier than we thought. Here's the part here now where I'm adding automatically adding reviewers anytime a pull request is opened. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me show you. That's about 1 minute and 21 seconds. So in 1 minute and 21 seconds, this huge ideal CI/CD process, automated process, we essentially configured, and I just showed you in 1 minute and 21 seconds how Azure DevOps makes that super simple and has everything that we asked for, everything that we wanted as a team for our continuous integration and continuous deployment process. And that's part of why I really, really like Azure DevOps so much, is because even if you're new to DevOps, which we all were as a team, right? We were doing it manually before. They make it very intuitive. So here you see a lot of the UI. You can go in the portal. It has step-by-step instructions. You get familiar with how you want to set up your processes. But over time, as you start to learn what it is you want, you can quickly switch over to what is now probably more popular are the templates written in YAML. But the point here is that the Azure DevOps portal makes it very easy to learn, get comfortable with, get used to. And then once you are used to it and you know what you need, you can quickly switch over to YAML and even have it create the YAML template for you also in Azure DevOps. So no matter where you are in creating a CI/CD process for your team, Azure DevOps probably has something that will help you. So next is the automated build. The build process, as we wanted it for our team, is every time a pull request was merged, we wanted the new changes to trigger a build, this is separate now from the pre-build. Pre-build is kind of like a, let's see what happens, a dry run almost of what happens. And only if it was successful do we actually merge it. So that's actually before step 1. So pull request, after that's done, pull request is merged. Those changes are now in dev. Those changes now trigger a new build. And then the successful build, if it is successful, creates an artifact. And this artifact is like this package of our changes, our software that is used in the release pipeline when it goes and actually gets deployed. So that's the build that we wanted. Next up is the release. Obviously, if we've already automated the build, we also want the robots to take over the release process as well. What happens in the release process? Well, once the artifact is created, we now want to trigger a release. We now have this new thing that has all of our new changes that have already been vetted, and we want to say whenever this is created, we want to trigger a new release. So that's the first step. The second step will be to pass any pre-deployment conditions. So again, these were more things that we needed for our particular team. And in this case, some of the pre-deployment conditions included having approval from QA and also having some other tests pass. And finally, after those conditions have been met, then we only then we want to deploy to the environment that we set. So after all of these checks and balances, after doing all of our due diligence to make sure everything is correct, is working, it's successful, it's built, it's compiled, we know very confidently that when we do finally deploy it to whatever environment, it has passed all of these checks and it has gone through a very rigorous due diligence process, and it has all been automated. None of us had to do anything. We can continue coding, we can continue fixing bugs. All of this is done in the background. We just get a notification once it is finished or if something went wrong. And finally, if there were any other additional things, I believe we didn't use any, but Azure DevOps does make it possible. If you had any other things to check off, maybe you wanted to send another approval after it has been deployed to your product manager so that they can do the final check off, you can use something like a post-deployment condition for something like that. So pre and post deployment conditions, I kept talking about it, mentioning it earlier, but what are they? Well, in Azure DevOps, they make it really easy to add kind of like these gates, these secure gates in between. And they actually also have something called gates, which are a little different. But for the purpose of explaining it here, that's what they kind of are. So as you go through this deployment, you can have something that happens before your code is deployed or after it is deployed. So what were some of those things? We wanted to consider pre-deployment approvals. So for example, when we wanted to go from QA to production environment, we knew that we wanted our QA engineer to approve everything that he has tested on the QA stage. So after that deployment on the QA environment, and before the deployment to prod, we needed that approval from QA before it ever went on. Now, this part is manual, right? This part is not automated. This is something you cannot automate, and that's what we want. Sometimes we need that human intervention. And in this case, we utilize Azure DevOps pre-deployment approvals exactly for this use case. Artifact filters are another really nice way to secure deployments. A problem we had that we were running into before was that our project was huge. And sometimes when we would change something, maybe just something on one particular module and only on a very particular page, it would build the entire project and deploy the entire project. But really, the only thing that changed was maybe 2 lines of code. So to stop that and to make it smaller, we would use something called artifact filters, where our deployment process could basically check with an expression that says, hey, if only this particular project or namespace, or if only any files that end in .js, so if any JavaScript files were changed, only then do you run this particular process. And that was something that became very, very useful for us, because we would pick and choose when we would want to run particular processes rather than running every single thing every single time, even though we only changed a little bit. Deployment queue settings were something else we also never knew about, but took advantage of in Azure DevOps when we found out. And to go along with that, as we were working as a team, sometimes I would fix 2 or 3 things, and then my colleague would be finished and working on their task, finish their task, and also have things ready to deploy. One of the nice things with Azure DevOps is that it can kind of combine all of those things together. And instead of queuing a bunch of different deployments all behind each other, it would wait and see if there are a collective group of things that are ready to deploy and bunch them together. That way you would only have to deploy once, with all the changes rather than continuously running all of those processes one after the other. And then again, I alluded to it earlier, gates are good for checking for other statuses. So let's say you had an external thing, maybe you have a webhook that you needed to call into and have to check that particular state. You could use gates to, again, add another check in your deployments to say, when I make this call to this external service, I can only continue my deployment if this is successful. And then finally, multi-stage deployment. So what's really awesome about Azure DevOps is that you can create these kinds of stages. Here, I used stages as the different environments that we've had, but that makes it really easy to see the overall picture of what your CI and CD process looks like. You see what is happening in your dev process. You see all the pre-deployment conditions and post-deployment conditions or approvals that you could set. And once you click into these, I apologize that it's not working. This is where I would go through and show you. But when you click into these, it makes it very easy to see the big picture of exactly what is happening at each stage. And it also makes it very easy if you have multiple environments that you needed to take care of. It makes it very, very nice and streamlined to have it all in this single place for you to view. Well, no demo because it's not working. But yeah, that's pretty much a great overview of why I love Azure DevOps. There are all of these things that we needed as a dev team, and Azure DevOps pretty much had all the solutions for us as a team, and even more so than that we are still not using now. But I'm sure as your team grows or as the workflows become more complex, you'll find a use for all of the different features and configurations that Azure DevOps provides you. So, salamat, thank you. I hope I'm not over, but that's it for me. And I'll be here, so if you have any questions about this, please stay after all the speakers. We'll be here to chat.
Hi, thank you very much, Adrienne. So we're just waiting for questions on our comment box. As of the moment, we don't have any questions.
No problem.
Well, I have some questions. If you're still thinking about your questions, dear audiences, so take your time. You can post it anytime on the chat box. It will be there. We can look at it later and we can reply later. But for now, maybe one of the questions I have, Adrienne, in your team, how big is your team? May I know?
The previous team that this story centered on was just 5 people.
Okay, so that's pretty sensible, working with pipelines and also the board. And it's also a very ideal size for an agile team, I guess. But how is it? What is the typical learning curve for learning Azure DevOps? It's like if you say there's a new member in the team who has no experience at all with using Azure DevOps. Typically how long does it take for a member to be in tune with the process and the best practices that the team already has against Azure DevOps?
I think it makes it much easier for ramp up time. So again, when we started as a team, we were all manual, right? So we were all learning as we went. We were building the car as we were trying to drive it. But when we did have our newest member come in, it was actually much easier for them to see what our process was because it was all laid out in Azure DevOps. You could see, here's the dev pipeline. Here are all the tasks that are part of the dev pipeline. And that person can go in, take their time, look at every step, look at the logs, look at the history, see our previous things. And really, because it was automated, they could play around with it. And even if they screwed something up or broke the build, we wanted them to, right? That's testing our processes. So I would say the ramp up time is not so bad because a lot of it is based on the graphical interface in the portal. But once you get comfortable, I think the only larger learning curve would be to actually learn YAML. But even that, when you create your processes in Azure DevOps, you can have them generate YAML templates for you. So again, the learning curve is not so bad. The curve is more for not learning the tool because they make it very easy to pick and choose what you want to do. I think the learning curve is more about what you want to do as part of your process and what you want to automate with your team. But yeah.
I completely agree because the tools are there and they're pretty standard, and you can read a bunch of documentation. There's a lot online, and then you can, of course, listen to Adrienne, and you will get how to use Azure DevOps properly. But then the challenge boils down to how you implement it as a team, because it also reflects your culture a lot. How do you want to work with your code? How do you want to work with each other? And I think that is one thing that you need to think about when you start implementing your pipelines or your practices or your DevOps practices using Azure DevOps. We
Absolutely.
have one. It's so nice that you mentioned YAML. I'm so happy because there's a user here, anonymous Facebook user. Sorry, guys, you have to first, of course, allow StreamYard for us to see your name, but I will just post a question here. So the YAML advantage and disadvantage on your pipelines.
Oh, that's a good question. So, YAML advantages, you can obviously create pipelines at a much faster pace. If you have lots of resources that you're managing, it's obviously much easier to write that code out, right? You write out your process in code, and that's way faster than pointing and clicking and dragging and going through Azure DevOps. That's one big advantage of using YAML templates. Now, the disadvantage now is if these processes or these YAML templates become so large, that themselves also becomes very hard to read. So if you have to change something in your process, you have to go through all this YAML code and see what's happening. A lot of it is generated. Usually that's what we do, right? Nobody really writes it from scratch, especially if you have a lot of stuff to manage. You have it generated. And if it's very, very, very long, it becomes very hard to kind of go through and see what you need to change and even make sense of what's happening. So those are kind of the main advantages and disadvantages I've seen with using YAML. So it depends on the project, depends on your team, and depends on how comfortable you are with YAML templates.
All right, thank you. Fräulein has a question.
Do you use Azure DevOps on Mongo projects? So we personally, on our team, we're free to use whatever we want. So yes, I do, particularly for actual Mongo engineering teams. I think there are a couple of projects that do, but again, I'm not on the engineering teams that work on core database server projects or platforms. So I'm not sure what they use. I don't know. I think I've seen a mix of Jenkins, and I've seen a mix of just plain GitHub Actions. But I think it depends on the department. So, but me personally, I do.
That's really nice to have that kind of freedom, right? So
Mhm.
you want to really limit the developers on the tools that they would be comfortable in using, because they would be productive in one and the others would be productive in another. So it's good to really hear out the developer experience. And I'm pretty sure that your developer experience with Azure DevOps is fantastic. That's why you choose that one. And also it's about familiarity. I think in my team, we started using TFS, I don't know, like
Yep,
a few decades back.
that's the OG. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
OG.
a lot has changed. I can imagine. But then, it kind of transitions smoothly from one tool to another, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Mhm. They're very quiet as of the moment.
No problem. We'll get to them at the end.
Yeah.
I'm
I
excited
think,
for our next speaker.
yeah, we'll get to them later. But for now, we will take a short break, and then we will have our next speaker on our show in a couple of minutes. So stick around. We have a lot of really nice content coming up. And also, again, I would like to remind everyone that at the end of the technical lightning talks, we also have like some sort of this talk show format where we just chit chat with each other. So if you like listening to that kind of conversation, it's going to be very interesting. Please stick around. And I know that it's about lunchtime in the Philippines soon. So while you're staying at home, enjoy the show while eating your lunch. Maybe put it up on your TV and then show it to your whole family. Look, Filipinas talking about Azure. All right. Thank you very much, Adrienne. And I will talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and we are back
Hi.
with our next Filipina speaker for today. Hello, Angelica.
Hello, Marilag.
So Angelica Quebec works as an IoT support
Yeah.
coordinator at Dingstra. So tell me a little bit about what you do with IoT.
Yeah. So I started my IoT journey 2 years, more than 2 years ago, around September 2017, when I transferred work from a logistics company where I worked as a reports, web, and mobile developer. So joining Accenture actually was where I started my IoT journey. So my first project was to industrialize a proof of concept uh, Azure IoT project for an electric company. So they use Azure, and we built a bridge to ThingWorks. So ThingWorks is one of the industrialized IoT platform out there. So uh, that the goal of that industrialization is to speed up their go-to market time. So and then after that project, I also had the opportunity to be part of the core team of another Azure IoT project within the same company, and there we used we worked with a heating appliances manufacturing company in the UK and Europe, um, and we built the architecture, the back end of that IoT solution on Azure as well, and we went live, we went production, and that helped the company to lower down their operational costs.
That sounds very interesting and amazing.
Yes.
I have always liked also tinkering with IoT and then devices, but I never get to really work directly with it. So I'm so happy that you
Mm.
joined us today. Thank you very much for taking
Yeah.
time for all the
And
preparation. So, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from you. I'm so excited to hear your session. So you can start sharing your screen and then we can go ahead. You
okay,
are based in
so
Manila right now, am I correct?
again, sorry.
You're currently in Manila.
Yes, yes, I'm currently in Manila, so I'm in the south of Manila. I currently reside in Cavite. Yeah,
Nice.
so okay, I'll be sharing my entire screen. Let me see if I can share, if you can see my screen now.
Um, yes, we can.
Yeah, so um yeah, so before anything else, hello everyone. I'm Angelica Lake Quebec, and I'm the IT support coordinator for Thingstra. So, like I said, I actually embarked on a journey with Azure IoT, as an Azure IoT developer. While I'm here in the Philippines. So that is um uh that is a that is a very unique opportunity, because I get opportunity to develop Azure IoT solutions even though I'm in the Philippines. So there's really opportunities out there that they need this skill sets. So now working for Thingstra, uh, from working from Azure IoT developer, I had that led me to Thingstra. So I had this opportunity to see the bigger world of IoT. So we are the IoT telco for Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and Macau. So from just seeing the software part, now I was able to have the opportunity to see the hardware part. So that's where I'll be taking you. So um yeah, so uh I'll be taking you for in this topic that I call the DNA of IoT. So from the flow of the topic will be like I'll be introducing you to the physical world of IoT. So uh, that is we will be going through the devices, the networks, and then we will be going back to Azure. So I'll be showing you a simple, cost-friendly, yet scalable Azure IoT architecture that you can use in your next Azure IoT proof of concept project. So let's get started. So first, I wanna start with why. So why IoT? Why IoT? And why it matters, and why it matters now. Also, we will be going to some of the devices, so we'll be getting to know these devices, and next we will be discussing about the networks that is being used to connect these devices to the software world, to the digital world, and we will be going to Azure, or any platform. We can actually use any platform, but for this talk, we will be using Azure as our platform of choice. All right. So first, let's start with why. So why IoT? So we all have assets, right? So we have cell phone, we have Bluetooth speakers. So we have assets, and every businesses have assets too. Like for example, for a car sharing business, you have cars, and also for the cold chains, cold supply chain. Um, there we have assets to take care of, um this um and these assets are very important to our business. It's important for the businesses, and it's important that we take care of our assets. So with that, uh, IoT helps enable businesses to be built upon integrity. So if you want transparency to be upon your business, like for example, you know what's the state of your devices, the state of these devices, and let this devices do the um, and let these devices or sensors do the talking for you. So it will drive business integrity. And also, if your business is transparent and you have the data, you have the transparency. Like for example, in a car sharing, for example, in a car sharing business, um, you want to know what really happened to that car. Like the insurance, you will be able to see when did that car stop, when did that car started going. So it will, with this data in place from the sensors, it can create you more opportunities to save more energy. For example, for a heating appliance manufacturing company or heating company, it will drive more opportunities to save energy, to save the cost of producing that necessity of this heating appliance. Also, IoT enabled business will enable or will build the trust of your customers. So, with that, with a successful IoT enabled business, with all this in place, it will give your business more trust. Why? Because IoT will enable your business to have integrity and to have more savings, to have a more socially responsible business, wherein you utilize this technology to maximize your business profits and at the same time to reduce carbon footprint. All right. So why IoT matters now? So costs have declined over the past 10 years, and there are new matured networks dedicated to the industrial IoT that provide low cost and low power. So over the past 10 years, the sensors cost has already gone down twice as much as before. The storage cost has already reduced, and the bandwidth and the processing itself. Yet the good news is 99% of things in the world are not connected yet. So we see there's still big opportunities there where we can apply IoT all the more. So it's now time. It's now time to start preparing and scaling up of what are the things that we need to understand in industrial IoT. So we will be going to Azure in the end, but hold on your seats as I take you on a journey about the DNA, what I call the DNA of IoT, of industrial IoT. So let's start with the devices. So for the devices, what are the things that you have to know about your devices? So we need to get to know our devices first. So before, I used to jump in already to Azure, and it's I also found going outside the software, the digital IoT world, it's very important to get to know your devices. So here are some devices. I have here, this is the Loca device. So it's a GPS and a Wi-Fi sniffing device. This is the Oyster. It's a GPS device. So it has a GPS sensor with it, and it's very durable. And this one is the connected Airbits, and this one is the Sensit. So I have it here with me. It's an easy device to start with. So it has the different sensors here. It has a light sensor. It has a temperature sensor. It has a door sensor. It also has vibration sensor, and a um, magnet sensor. So first, you need to identify what are the sensors or what are the measurements that your devices can provide for you to ingest or to analyze. So that's one. Second is the battery life. So um, battery life is very important. Like for example, this this Azure this devices. For example, a GPS device. If that device, I checked on Shopee actually how much what are the GPS devices available here. So I found a GPS device where you can put a SIM. So the battery life only lasts like for a month. So it will be hard to maintain the devices if you need to recharge the device every month. So it really matters. The battery life really matters when you are when you want your your company or business to be IoT enabled business. So also we will you need to get to know what is the network connectivity that your device needs. So usually you can connect your device over different network connectivity, 4G, 3G, 5G. So, but for this discussion, I'll be introducing you to LP1. So, LP1 is low power wide area network. So, and at the same time, also, you need to know how durable your device is. Like for example, this Oyster GPS tracking device. So it's wireless and it's very rugged. So it can withstand the environmental challenges that your device will have. Okay. So now, for that, we will be, I'll be introducing you to the best-selling devices, or one of my favorite devices, which is the Thingstra Oyster. So I already showed you how the Oyster looks like. So it's low profile, it's rugged, and it can give you 140 times a day at least the frequency of updates that it can give you, and at the same time it has an amazing battery life of and it can last up to 5 years at least. So this device is also a Sigfox certified devices. So um, uh, you can easily scale your business if you have a car sharing business, for example, and you want to lend those cars to other people. So you'll be able to track where the car is, and in case it gets stolen, so you can actually configure the heartbeat of this device to a more active mode. So yeah, that's Oyster. And another one, this is the Airwit. So this is also one of the devices that I work with, um, and one of the city councils in Australia actually use this uh, during the times when there was a bushfire in Australia. So they use this device to measure the carbon dioxide and to have an air quality monitoring proof of concept. And also it has a good battery life of 3 years. So it's really a good device. It's also certified. And one of the use cases or the case study for this device, the connected airwits in Finland, is for lean heat. So lean heat was able to optimize the consumption, the energy consumption for at least 100,000 homes. So imagine how big is the impact of this device, and it has resulted to 20% peak load reduction for district heating producer and 30% savings on technical maintenance costs. So that is the impact of of this IoT devices. So now we will be going to the different we will be heading on to the different networks wherein your IoT devices can connect to the digital world. So the networks, these are the different networks that your IoT devices can connect. So for the most common examples, and we have it here in the Philippines, so 3G and 4G. So most of the devices that are available here in the Philippines is mostly 3G or 4G powered. So we're still waiting for 5G to be rolled out here. And also we are very familiar with the smart home devices which connects over Wi-Fi. So that is easily available. Like we have different devices like the Amazon Echo Dot. We have Google Home. So and for those use cases, the usual network that they use is the Wi-Fi connection. So and also we have the Bluetooth powered devices. And now I'll be introducing you to LP1. So LP1 is the low power wide area networks, and this actually buzzwords it got introduced to me when I started working for Azure IT projects in Europe for Europe. So they have their this networks, and these are the networks that actually has uh, uh, IoT dedicated network. So they're really designed for IoT. And what is nice about them is um, you only have a very small messages as big as 12 bytes only, and it consumes lesser battery. So it 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 enables your device to last longer than it should. So it's applicable to industrial IoT use cases. All right. So when choosing a network for your device, so we need to take into account the coverage for that network and the cost for that network. So also this, we have to check the security. So what are the security mechanisms in that network, and of course the value added services. So yeah, for this we will be checking on Sigfox. So for Sigfox, the coverage and cost of for you to start connecting your devices, your industrial devices to this network is just it can go as low as 14 AUD, 14 Australian dollars. So if you divide that to 365, it just costs like around a peso per day for the connection per device. So that's very cheap to get your device start connecting already. And Sigfox has a very ultra low cost design for their modules. So I even found out that they're actually targeting to have this $1 Sigfox IoT device. So the coverage and the cost in connecting your device to Sigfox is really amazing because it will allow your business to scale. And also, if you can see this, these are the screenshots that I've attached here is the coverage and different areas. Like for example, this is in Hong Kong. So as you can see, the red ones that is like there's lots of redundancy for the base stations that we have in Hong Kong. So the red ones are very densified areas. Also, this one is for the Sigfox service maps for Australia, and this one is for New Zealand. So we have a very strong coverage, for example, for this area. And Sigfox is actually a global IoT network, so it gives you the right coverage for for your IoT devices. Also, Sigfox provides value-added services wherein you have here they provide you this backend, as you can see. So this backend, the Sigfox backend provides you with value-added services where you can manage your devices, and at the same time, you can easily integrate it to different platforms. So uh, you can integrate Azure IoT Hub in this and from the Sigfox backend. So and also it has like base station monitoring facilities as well, and also the security. So Sigfox has this security in place. So they have put an encryption in when you are sending your when the device sends a message to the base station and back and forth. So that's it for the networks. So now we will be heading to Azure, any platform of choice. And I'll be showing you a very simple, sweet and simple Azure IoT architecture that you can use. So um, that you can use, like for example, we have the story of the connected airways a while ago, and here I'll be showing you I'll be showing you in the end like the visualization output for one of the proof of concept that I made for Airwits. So here from the devices you chose Airwits because it's already industrial ready, and it connects to the Sigfox network. And since Sigfox network has this Sigfox backend, that will enable you to connect or to ingest the data from Sigfox to Azure IoT Hub by just providing the connection string. And then we will be using Azure IoT Hub as the ingestion service. And then for for the continuous intelligence or real time analytics, so we will you can actually use Azure streaming analytics. So and Azure Streaming Analytics, you can connect it to Power BI. So with at least just three Azure IoT service, so Azure IoT Hub, Azure Analytics, and Power BI, you can already jump start your Azure IoT project. So you can already have a proof of concept. Yet it has the potential to scale because Azure Streaming Analytics can be connected to different data storages, data warehousing. You can also have a real time scoring with the Azure um, machine learning service. So you can also integrate Azure Streaming Analytics to different alerts and action services and like Azure functions, etc. So yeah, so uh, I'll be showing you the output. So here is the output like from the device to the network, Sigfox backend to Azure IoT Hub, and then connecting the Azure IoT Hub to Azure Streaming Analytics, and then to your Power BI report. So with just three uh, Azure services, working on you can already start working on your next Azure IoT proof of concept. And now, after you already did your proof of concept, so what could be the realized impact? So just like what Lean hit uh, already achieved, so you can save more energy. So you can save on the technical maintenance cost once you already have the data with you through the sensors, through the network, and through Azure. So now you have so now that's it. You have um the three key things in your IoT journey. So just connect it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelica. Do we call you Angelica, or do you have a
Yeah.
nickname?
You can call me Laika for short.
Oh, Leica, it's true. Yeah, you can also follow Leica at Leica in Twitter. It's your handle is a Leica Doodles. Is
Laika
that correct?
Doodles. Yeah.
Yeah, you will
Yes.
find it also at the end of the show, and we will be keeping this recording, and then we will put that up at the end of the recording, so you could still keep in touch. So we have one question here, Leica, from Ken
Yes.
VR.
Mhm.
So, what security standards your company implements across these IoT devices?
That's really a cool question because our company provides device level encryption. So we have devices that actually has that. So that's really cool in terms of security. And secondly, the Sigfox network also has an encryption. So from the device, you need to at least have decryption service, and then on the backbone of this network, the Sigfox network, it also has an encryption, and then you have Azure IoT. So that's like three layers of security already. So that's different because I also was able to read articles wherein they have Azure some IoT use cases where they were able to penetrate the network of that company, like from an aquarium, and they were able to sniff on the network. So that's that they're using Wi-Fi, so they're sharing the network. So this is like an dedicated IoT network, so that keeps you more secure, especially when you're working on like 1,000 of devices already.
Yeah, because I guess that is the biggest concern for most companies
Yes.
who's just starting out to implement IoT, the whole security thing, because they are actually connecting all these devices and thousands of
Yeah.
devices in their network. So if one device has been compromised, then of course the entire network will be compromised. So I'm sure that's a very complex topic. So, but if you can just give maybe the three most important, like probably the simplest but important advice you can give to companies to practice good security
Mhm.
when implementing maybe even their first IoT
Yep.
um, solution, what would that be?
Decouple the network. So decoupling the network already secures you a lot, like from the other use cases that uses just typical Wi-Fi. So when you have the Sigfox IoT network, so Sigfox already takes care of the security of the net for the network of your devices across the globe.
Excellent. I have a question. So, for someone who is just starting out with the IoT
Mm.
journey as a developer, maybe like you are as
Development.
an
Yeah.
engineer, and just wanted to kind of play with it,
Mhm.
what would be your advice? Kind of like what device should they start on? What kind of scenario should they start playing with? And yeah, what kind of applications should they use in Azure, for
Mm.
example? Because there's a bunch, right? It can get overwhelming if they have to start out big. So,
Yes, yes. Yes, if you check like the whole Azure IoT components that you can be overwhelmed. So I tried to focus on at least two. So the third one is Power BI. I just use it for visualization. So that's very quick. So you can the stakeholders could already like have the understanding or already the on how the data would look like and how they would it will produce value. But the two key things for ingestion and processing your Azure telemetry messages is Azure IoT Hub. So Azure IoT Hub is a free tier, so you can already experiment like at 8,000 at least. The free tier can manage 8,000 device messages daily. So that's a lot. Like if you're already starting with the device, um, and also you can already connect that to streaming analytics. Streaming analytics has a very low learning curve. That's why I like it too because it only uses SQL queries. So it's yeah, it can perform basic operations like when you like just move the decimals because when I worked with connected air bits, so what I needed to do is just to move the decimals to get the right value for some of the telemetry from some of these measurements that's coming from the device. So that's two Azure services and plus Power BI or the visualization tool. And also for if you will be choosing a device, um, choose. I started with this, so I started with Sensit. So Sensit, I'm not sure if you can play with it if you're here in the Philippines, but it's a good device. If you want to start with, it has a very intuitive interface. Some devices doesn't have anything to press on. It doesn't have a switch like for this one. This is Oyster, so it's too rugged. It's even hard to open. So for this Sensit device, if I can show you what's nice about it. Yeah, for example, it's like it's lighting red right now. So the red actually symbolizes that it's already in um, magnet sensor mode. So it has 5 modes. And you just need to long press if you want to switch modes. So now it's gonna here it will light up if it starts sending message, and then once it starts sending message, you can check it on the Sigfox backend. So here green, you can switch the different modes easily. So uh, you can actually do this with or without Azure IoT as your uh, platform. It has a platform ready for you. So this one for me is the easiest that I worked with.
that is super cool. So I really like your
Yeah.
advice that you have to start slow because a lot of developers
Yes.
or engineers get quite I don't know hesitant diving into IoT projects because they think it's too technical. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that you need to learn, but I mean, for me, who hasn't really worried a lot with IoT, the advice you just gave me makes me feel confident I can maybe start
Yes.
tomorrow, just get a device and then play around with the lights
Yes.
and
So,
connect it to Azure, and I
I
can see
don't-
everything. And you mentioned Power BI. That's really good because, yeah, so you can go very deep with the technicalities, but at the end of the day, it's what your customer is to see that matters, what kind of value they take out from all these messages coming from these devices. And then when they can easily see that, then they
Mhm.
can easily
Yeah.
appreciate yeah, what you're trying to do, the solutions that you're trying to make for them. And
Yes.
that's, I think, what matters most. So that's really, really interesting. I hope we had more time to talk about this, about IoT. So maybe in our next event for the Azure User Group Manila, you can have like a whole hour, like a whole session, or maybe two, or a boot camp, just, to guide us on how to work with IoT. So thank you very much,
Thank you.
Angelica.
Really.
We will, yeah. So how does it feel?
Yeah,
Being,
it's my first time.
yeah, you did really,
Yeah.
really great. It's so amazing. So very interesting. So, like I said, next time maybe I'll give you the entire floor. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the
Thank
effort. And then I will see you around at the talk show. So please to stay. And then we have a lot to talk about. Thank you very much. And
you.
for the rest of you guys, we will take another about a 4-minute break before we introduce our next speaker for the day. So please stay around. If you have questions, don't forget to post them on the comment section or the chat box on YouTube. We're going to try to answer them as much as possible, if not later. But you not. Oh, so somebody asked, let's just squeeze this in, right? So what's a simple project to start with? Maybe
Yeah.
what kind of
Oh, what kind of scenario? So it depends on which part of the world you are in. So you need to first identify what problems you want to solve. So for example, for Australia, like they had problems with bushfire, so they wanted to measure the quality of air in that place. So the perfect example would be, if you have an Australian client, is to have this air quality monitoring proof of concept. So it depends. Like for Europe, uh, uh, heating appliance is a necessity. So that's a great business potential that where you can apply this IoT skill. But for a simple project that you can start with, you can start with like if it's a personal project though, you can start with this kind of device with where it has so many sensors, so you can already have the different measurements. You get familiar with the different measurements like locks, so need to have the proper understanding of the units of measurement for these devices.
That's really great. And I appreciate that heating devices in Europe because I even freeze during the summer. So that would be nice to have. It's summer right now, but it's kind of like, I don't know, 15 degrees. So can't
Wow.
do anything. So I
Yeah.
hope the IoT can change the weather in
Yes, we're,
Europe.
we're monitoring you. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think
why you need
so.
to be secured.
Yeah,
That's why you need to be
exactly.
secured.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you very much again, Angelica. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
And then we'll take a short break and don't go anywhere. Bye. Hello, and we are back. But before we start with our next speaker, I just want to see you write your comments on the chat box about what you're having for lunch, because it's around 6:30 in the morning here in Denmark, and because of the terrible pandemic, it has been kind of the longest time I haven't been to the Philippines, and I really miss the Filipino food already. So if you just feel like sharing what you're having for lunch, that would be nice to know. And the one who gets to share the best lunch ever, I'll put that up on the screen later, and then I will hunt you when I get to the Philippines the next time, and then I will give you a gift. So come on, please be very interactive. So we'll just have fun out here. Okay, let me introduce you to our next speaker. Her name is Miss Jonah Carrio Andersson. She is from Sweden. She's a software engineer for Forefront in Sweden. And she is also very, very passionate about mentorship. She has been teaching young people in Sweden on coding, doing programming. And I think that is really, really inspiring that you get to teach young kids. And also, as I understand it, Jonah, you also teach young women or just women.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, hi everyone. Jonah here. This is also my first tech talk. So, please be patient and bear with me, but I will do my best. But about your question, for 2 years on the side of my job as a software developer, I also like once a week went to schools to teach programming in several schools locally in my city. And then I did that for 2 years on the side of my software programming job. And then on my free time now, I mentor several young women, Swedish women here in Sweden who is studying programming or system development. So from time to time, we do fika if they want some motivation and they need help with their code or problems in school. Just talk about anything tech related. So I'm here for them. So even though I have a full busy schedule, but I try my best to make time for them because I want to be a role model to everyone for Filipinas and even here in Sweden because it's the same problem. There are a few of us who are software developers worldwide. So I want to make a difference, and this is why I'm here to talk about my Azure technology, one of them at least.
Well, you are already making a big difference for us just being here. So I'm so happy that you get to join us. I think also we met through one of your colleagues at time. I was also doing some
yes. So I think it was last year when you and Adrienne were in SweetTug event, a .NET event. So that you shared about earlier. So two of my coworkers, they were at your event and told me, Jonah, why you didn't join us? We saw there were like two great speakers who are from the Philippines, and I was so curious. I went to the SweetTug website and tried to reach out to you via LinkedIn. That's how we got connected.
I'm so happy you reached out to us, and here we are talking about Azure.
Yes.
So yeah, and you're talking about Azure Service Bus today. This is also one of my favorite topics or one of my favorite tools in Azure. So I was so happy when you submitted your talk and I saw, oh, she's talking about Service Bus. I'm so excited. That's how we get excited over this.
Yeah, actually, I'm not an expert in Azure Service Bus, but I'm learning a lot about Azure. So I am doing a lot of research and hands-on on Service Bus, and it's one of my favorite because of its features. So I wanted to share it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. So let me just put up your screen here, and then I'm gonna leave you on stage, and yeah, the stage is yours. Have fun.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes. I see it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so today I will be talking about Azure Service Bus and a basic overview and concept. So here I did a slide about me. So I'm a software developer, as Marilag already mentioned. I'm a software developer at Forefront Consulting in Sweden. It's a IT company with 5 offices in the entire Sweden and main office in Stockholm. So we have like 400 employees. So right now I'm doing a full stack development at the company and doing some IT consulting. And on the side, I'm interested in learning new technologies, especially about Azure, and currently working on getting a cert on to be an Azure developer associate, and then also mentor to young women here locally. So I'm gonna talk about communication as like to start with. I see communication is an important part of our lives. Like for example, now especially with Corona times all over the world, so we use digital technology to communicate. So it is very important for us to communicate. So there are two types of communication. Like a two-way, we build relationships, you communicate with our relatives, family, friends, and even our colleagues, and do our work online. So thanks to the technology, so we can communicate. And there's also one-way communication where um, it's one way, but at the same time, it's important. We can have like an emergency, for example, calling. Here in Sweden, we have a number, like a special number, 112, that we call in case of emergency. It doesn't matter if it's an accident or something happened in the road or an emergency, or if you want to help someone or other people. So it's a one-way communication, but also important. But the point that I have here is that it doesn't matter if it's one way or two way. We don't want our message sent to be a failure. We have a purpose why we send a message. So it's either to communicate or to send an important information. So that's the reason why I decided to share about Azure Service Bus, because it's also very important, and it solves a lot of complex messaging problems in our applications and even our services. So as an overview, I will be talking about what is Service Bus, what are the basic and some advanced features, what is namespace, uh, service bus queue, uh, and I'm gonna try to compare about queues and storage queues, and then topic subscriptions. And if time permits, I will show some demo examples on Azure's and some references to learn more about developing on Azure Service Bus. So what is Azure Service Bus? Basically, it's like a cloud messaging service that you can use to connect your applications and integrate it with your services. And this messaging service is in the clouds, like in Azure. So it is if you're developing cloud applications, it's recommended and it's good to use Azure Service Bus for handling your messages and queues in your applications. So it is also secured. Here, why is Azure Service Bus? It's because it has a feature of reliable asynchronous messaging, and you can scale it using Azure Portal. And then it is also secure, so there are security features that you can apply in your applications. So here are the basic and advanced features. So you can do, there's a feature of a message session that supports first in, first out concepts that guarantees that which message comes in first, then gets out first. You know, the software developers knows, familiar maybe with FIFO concept. And auto forwarding is used to chain a queue or topic to another queue or another topic. It's like forwarding. It's like the concept of sending a message to another one, to another receiver. So, and then let's see. Oh, sorry. And then there's also dead letter queue. Dead letter queue, or DLQ. It's when if it's when the message doesn't go through, so um, you have the option to save it and check it later on what you can do with it. So it holds the message that can't be delivered to any receiver or that cannot be processed, and then later on you can inspect them and handle it from that queue. So you can decide if you want to continue delivering it, or you want to cancel that operation. And then there's also scheduled delivery. You can submit messages to a queue or topic for delayed processing or for any scheduled time. For example, if you want a scheduled job to on your application and send that message, so there's that feature also. And then message deferral, there's also that feature on Azure Service Bus, but it's for a special case, like for workflows. So there's a guide about that and how you can work it on special scenarios. And then client side batching. That is like it enables you to a queue or a topic delay a message for a certain time. For example, if you want to send the message, for example, in a week, in a certain time and date and time, you can if, for example, the sender will add another like additional message in that batch, in that queue. So it will send the messages as batch. So it's like waiting to be sent in a week, but new messages coming in, that will be also included as a batch or a group. So that's how client batching works. And then there's also filtering and actions for topics, and then auto delete on idle. So on auto delete on idle, you can choose to specify the interval of in which the queue is deleted, and the minimum duration for in Azure Service Bus is 5 minutes. So you also have that options, and then there's also auto delete and idle. That's that one for 5 minutes. And then duplicate detection. Duplicate detection, as the word or the phrase describes it, it detects duplicates. But it is very special because you can enable duplicate detection to have the message be sent to resend the same message. And then the other option is that you can also use duplicate detection for queue or topic to discard any duplicates. So there are two purposes for duplicate detection. If you want to be practical and do effective message sending, you can use duplicate detection to send the same message, or you can use duplicate detection to discard or delete or prevent duplicate detection. So in our applications, we don't want our client or receiver or users of our application get spam, for example. We don't want to get the same message at the same time, like 10 messages of the same thing. We don't want that. But sometimes we also, like, for example, reminders. The reminders, like reminders, email reminders is a good example to use duplicate detection to send the same message, but you can maybe customize the parameters or like subject of your message. And then Azure Service Bus also provides security protocols. So that's one of the reasons that it is secured. It supports security protocols such as shared access signatures, SAS, and RBAC, role-based access protocol, and even Azure managed identities in like AD, Active Directory. So, and then okay, and then there's also a feature of geo disaster recovery, just like other services in Azure. Like if uh, if one of your region has like an outage, you have the option that to activate geo disaster recovery features on your Azure Service Bus service as well. Okay, there are a lot of information to take in, but I wanted to highlight the good features and the good things on how Azure Service Bus can solve complex problems, messaging problems that we encounter sometimes in our applications or services. And then when it comes to supported libraries and integrations, so it's actually diverse. You can, Azure Service Bus supports .NET, C#.NET, .NET environment, Java, and even JMS. It's a Java messaging service. I myself haven't coded a lot of GMS, but I am programming a lot of C# in .NET environment, and I have a bit of background of Java. But if you want to integrate your Azure Service Bus, a messaging service with GMS, there are documentation about that on the Microsoft Azure website. And then, of course, Azure Service Bus also integrates well with other Azure cloud services like Event Grids, Logic Apps, and then Azure Functions, as well as Dynamics 360 applications, as well as Azure Stream Analytics. And these are the protocols that that it supports: standard AMQP and HTTP REST for the security. Okay, I hope my presentation it's not too techy or too boring. I wish I had like funny images to say, but I can show you my smile. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about namespace. Namespace is very important if you want to create Azure Azure Service Bus in Azure. So namespace is like a container for Azure Service Bus, regardless if you're gonna create a topic or a queue for your message service or apps. So here is an example that they're here on the photo here. There's like a message sender. It can be a mobile app, a web app, or a service or an API. You need to, in the center, service bus is like a namespace is like a container. So if you, for example, if you want to create a queue, a service bus queue with your messages, you need to have it in the namespace. So it's like a very vital and integral part of getting started with Azure Service Bus. So it's you cannot create a queue or a topic without creating a namespace first. So it's important to keep in mind. And then here on the third part of the photo, we see that a web app, an app sends a message through using Azure Service Bus queue through in a namespace, and then the receiver, another application or service, receives the message. So that's like an example. And then here, Azure Service Bus queue is like a message broker, or like a mediator. We call it mediator. In the Philippines, we call it mediator. Like, for example, if we try to sell like in the Philippines, it's popular that if we sell if we try to sell a property, usually it's either we have to talk to, say, a property broker. So it's like Azure Service Bus queue. It's like serves as a message broker between the sender and the receiver. So in this two images, we see an example of one sender and one receiver, and then on the next photo we see a sender and then one queue, and in that queue there are several receivers. So there are different kinds of scenarios or different kinds of like use case where you can use queue to solve your messaging uh, problems or messaging features in your applications. And in Azure, there is also another messaging service called storage queues. So I decided to present this comparison between Azure Service Bus queues and storage queues because it's very important when choosing the right service. So I'm talking about Azure Service Bus now, but it doesn't mean that it's the right and perfect service, Azure messaging service for your application. So it really depends what are the requirements of your system or your application. So for example, you can if you want your storage, if your storage is like over 80 gig, then you would need to use storage queue. Otherwise you can consider service bus queues. And then based on my experience and my knowledge, there are, if I were to compare service bus queues and storage queues, there are more features in service bus queues aside from what I've listed here. So if you want to learn more, there's a long list actually on the documentation on Azure website. So if you want a duplicate detection that is automatic, it is recommended to use Service Bus queue. So there are a lot of things to consider if you want to choose queues or storage. So it depends. So let's see next. So let's see. I hope you can see my code. Can you see the screen or the text? I hope it's not so small. Let's see. So here I have an example. If you can see my screen or my code, well, not so small text. I have an example. Instead of showing you my Visual Studio, I decided to do a screenshot of my simple console application. Here I have an example simple app where I just created a string with my service bus connection string. That service connection string that you can get on the Azure Service portal when you create the namespace. And then you have to have a string queue name, and then you have a static implementation of the queue client. And then here there's a method main async. I did 50 like number of messages. You set the number of messages, and then you create an instance of the new queue client with the service connection string and then the queue name. And then there are asynchronous functions like send message async, where you send your number of messages or queue messages you want to send. This is just an example. 50 is just an example, but you can have like unlimited messages. It depends on what you have, what you want to do with your application. So in the send message async, you take a number of messages to send as a parameter, and then you can have like a loop. You loop through your number of messages, and in your loop you can send a new message, and then you have an asynchronous a queue client sends it asynchronously. So that is a simple example of sender. And then on the other side, a separate project, here is the example of a queue receiver that takes the messages from the previous application or previous console. So we see like a console app that also connects to the same connection. Same queue name. As you noticed, the queue name I had was Dev Jonah Test Q1, and it's also the same on my sender. So here it's different because instead of sending, we get the result. We have a function that handle messages, and it also uses a queue client. So here on the register on message handler messages, you can set some properties like max concurrency call, like if you want to queue one message at a time, or if you want autocomplete false. There are other properties that you can set here, which you can find more on the documentation. And then here you can do an exception handling for your messages, so you know what's going on your queue, like if it's received or not, or if the task is completed or not. So that's the receiver. It's the same actually. Okay. And the next type of service bus Azure Service Bus is the topics and subscriptions. It's like a good example of topics and subscription is like when you subscribe to a newsletter. So it's a one-way publish, subscribe messaging communication model where you have a sender and you have a message to send, for example, a newsletter or a message, and then you have subscribers, a list of receivers. So you can send subscribers can subscribe to a topic, and they will receive the messages depending on which subscription topic they are subscribed to. So it's a special feature, another type of service bus messaging. Here is an example scenario. I have different types of apps, and then a namespace as required, and then I have a topic, and then my topic has like you can have one or two or more subscriptions, and then in every subscriptions you can have several receivers here, and then receiving of messages can be also separated. So here's another code example. I hope it's let's see. It's also the same. You need your connection string. You need a topic name, and then this time it implements iTopic client. And you create the number of messages, create a new instance of topic client that takes the connection string and then the topic name. And then there's like a synchronous message function that takes your messages and send it asynchronously. And then you can do the error handling by doing other logics on your function. So, and here is also the receiver that takes the topics, So that's how it looks. Okay, so that was it. I won't show a lot of code, but because of the time. But to summarize, we learned about the basic concepts of Azure Service Bus, and then the basic and advanced features, as well as the two types of Azure Service Bus features, which is the queues and topics. And I'm not sure if our time permits, but I can show you quickly.
You can go ahead. We can adjust the time. It's fine.
It's okay. Let's see. Here, let's see. I need to change the. I need to go to the Azure. Can I change the screen? Like, how do I do that?
Yeah, you could stop screen sharing and then reshare. Then I
Okay,
will.
let's see. Application. Let's see this one. Here. Okay, that's good. Here is I'm gonna just show you quickly how it looks in Azure, and it's just showing you the code. But here I have my Azure portal. It's my private account. So here I have a resource group with my resources for Azure Service Bus. And then here I have a Service Bus namespace. And in my namespace, I have the option to add a queue. Here I can choose a name and then some other features, message time to be live. So you can choose that. And here are some of the features that I mentioned on my presentation: duplicate detection, dead lettering with expiration, and then session. So you can read more about the details and what it does by doing info, highlight on the info or reading the documentation. And then the queue, the topic is the same. And here on the left side, I have two entities. This was the queue that I made, uh, where I have the code. So here, because I already uh, run the application, so it's showing right now that there's no active messages. Uh, but when I start the my message sender, for example, and I set 50 messages, is gonna show here that I have 50 messages, active messages waiting. And then when I starts my receiver, then it will start like counting down that all messages were received by the receiver. And there are analytics and some statistics that you can check on the logs on your Azure Service Bus. And then I'm ending soon. Let's see. So, and then for documentation and examples, there's Azure Service Bus guide link here. I can send it the presentation to you if you need the links sent via mail. And there, if you want hands-on, you can also go to Azure GitHubs and there are GitHub examples, and then recommended online courses that I myself have tried. There's like Azure Service Bus by Salik Nowlink and LinkedIn Learning. There's also a Pluralsight course and that you can go in depth with Azure Service Bus, and also the basic if you want to learn the basics of learn more about the overview of all Azure services. There's also Adrienne's LinkedIn Learning that I myself went through and finished. So it's those three courses are my top recommended courses if you want to learn more. And then that's it. So I want to thank you for the time and for listening to me. Maybe it's too technical, but I hope you learned something. If you want to connect with me, you can connect on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter. And then I have a website, Jonah_Andersson.tech, that I build and newly build. I just build. So if you want to connect, you can do that too. And then you can email me on Jonah_Andersson@forefront.se if you want to communicate and just connect. Well, thanks everyone. So I'm open to answer your questions if there's anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonah. That was super interesting. Like I said, I love all these messaging capabilities that we have on the cloud at the moment. They are super useful in so many projects. So I'm so glad that you took the time to teach us about Service Bus. And
Yes.
yeah, Fortunately, we have like a very short time, but again,
Yes.
something that yeah, you can just talk about on and on and on. So maybe next time we will
Yeah.
have a whole session with you and share more.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry it took 24 minutes, I think.
No problem at all. So we have time. I think the people are just
Yes.
enjoying their lunch over in the Philippines. I saw already someone commenting what they're eating, and I'm gonna post
Aha.
that
Okay.
later.
Okay. What is it?
Yeah.
Jollibee burger patties. I miss
Yeah.
Jollibee burger. I wish there's like Jollibee in Sweden or in. Do you have Jollibee in Denmark?
No, no, not at all. We
Yeah,
don't
I
have
miss
any burgers.
Jollibee. Yes, but
Oh,
yeah, but yeah, that's good. But yesterday I bought bangus. There's like a Filipino market in Sweden. I think it's called Pinoy Market. So they were here at drop by, so I bought bangus and corned beef, and like it's pricey. It's not like Philippine price, but I got some bangus
oh,
and some
I'm really jealous.
bagoong.
I can't get that here. I have to go to Sweden to get that.
I
Oh,
can send you a bagoong if you want.
oh,
I bought like six pieces, so I
really?
can send it. Yeah, I can send it to
Oh,
you.
I
Like
love
it won't like it's like longevity is
I
long.
hope they don't. I don't. They don't question the immigration, and it's like you're not allowed. You're. I don't. I hope
Yeah,
they don't quarantine the bagoong.
yeah. I hope not.
So let's see if do you have any questions? I have a lot of questions because I'm full of questions. So I work with
Oh,
Service Bus myself, and don't worry. I mean, I really like that you talked about the technical stuff because that's what we really want to hear. Also with these sessions, that's why I started with the technical lightning talks, and then we can talk about all the fun stuff later on. But I do have one question. Well, I have several. Let's see how
oh,
much time we have.
I hope it's not advanced.
Oh no, no, no! It's more about also around learning Service Bus because we use
Okay. Yes.
team and the process, but I think I also talk a lot about event driven design, and the thing is I think people always struggle with choosing the right technology
Mm.
when they implement messaging. So my question would be, what kind of business process you normally think that is very suitable for service buses? When is it necessary, and when is it, you think, when is it overkill?
Mm. Oh, okay. That's in which application? Can you repeat the question?
So, like, if there's one thing, what kind of business problem or business process, like when it
Mm.
hits you, oh, that would need a service bus, or when I say something, this kind of application or software, you don't need a service bus for that. Maybe you just use
Mm.
storage queue, or maybe no queuing at all. So
No.
when do you say what?
It actually depends on the. Let's see. It depends on the requirements of your application. So if you want to create uh, um, is if there's a business process or business requirement that requires you to detect duplicate messages, or if you want to integrate it with Azure AD, or for example, if your applications or your use case require you that you integrate a lot of like Azure services like Azure functions, event grids, and things like that, then may definitely you should maybe it's worth to consider Azure Service Bus. But otherwise, we have to be flexible and open. So it really depends on what is the requirements. I
Yeah,
hope I hope
absolutely.
it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it helps that, like, the features that you showed earlier with the
Mm,
list.
mm,
So tick off those lists, or the items, the features with what you need, and then make
mm.
a decision, right? So it all boils
Yes.
down to the requirement. Like,
Yeah.
see, oh, I need this, I need that, I need to implement this. Check, check, check. Then maybe it's service bus, maybe it's event grid, maybe it's storage queue. So
Yes.
it's yeah.
It's
Uh,
it actually in it, it's very to make like you can do the checklist which one you need or which one you don't.
Okay. Yeah, and are you part of the team who's implementing this? Is that some sort of a team decision? What is the architecture process, or is it normally just the developer deciding I will use Service Bus or that, or is it something that comes from the whole architecture team? And what just I'm interested in learning in your within your team, what is the journey into designing applications that are based on messaging? How does it normally, get to that?
Um, I kind of got cut off my audio. I lost
Yeah.
connection, but you were asking, if you got it right, you were asking about the practical applications uh, of
Yeah.
Azure Service Bus.
Yeah,
Oh,
like within your team, is that something that you have to just the process on the decision making process? How does that normally pan out? Is it coming from the architecture? Is the team deciding, or is it normally the developer can gets to pick? Yeah.
um, it actually depends on the situation. For example, in a project that I was involved with, for example, it was like I had to build an application from like an old application, like 10 years old application in .NET, and then I need to build a new one, like almost like a replica, but it's like from scratch. So I'd had the role of not just developing the application, but also like doing the architectural and things, plan it. So it depends. For in my experience, I got to experience. I choose which it's because my team didn't have the knowledge about Azure, so it was just like the right. Yeah, I was the right person to just decide and things. It's like I was leading it, so I decided that this one we will use. And then sometimes you get to a challenge that you need to Google and research, is this the right one? And then read and learn from other experiences. So I I got to decide, in my experience, I got to decide which Azure service I can use in my application. So in my experience, it's a learning process.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. We have one last question from our audience. I'm just gonna put it up. Oh, actually, well, I have another one. So this one is a newer one. So for you, what is the best local development environment setup if you will be using Azure Service Bus?
Local development setup. I actually use Visual Studio 2019. So I like Visual Studio. So I use it a lot. So I recommend using Visual Studio. But you can also, so you have to, when you develop Azure Service Bus, you like all Azure developers knows, you need to have Visual Studio, as in you have the Azure portal. So Visual Studio.
Can you use an emulator like with the storage queue, or you have to connect to Azure, right? For Service
Yes,
Bus.
yes. It depends on, you have a storage queue. You can use the emulator, or you can also use, if you're working with that the data or database, you can use there's a tool called a Azure Data Studio that you can
Mm.
use to look through your like databases on Azure. So but basically, Azure Portal is like a powerful environment that you have everything. You can create Azure functions in just a web browser. You can create Azure functions in Visual Studio. So it's very flexible. So if you have a computer that is low memory or not so not so powerful, then it's really cool that Microsoft Azure makes it possible for us developers to code and do things on the web browser. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Just because this is a good question. Last question before we move on. Azure Service Bus similar to Apache Kafka in a way. Um,
Okay. I haven't worked with Apache Kafka, so I worked mostly on .NET applications. So I'm not sure, but I can research on that and get back to Marvin.
yeah. Thank you. But I
Yes.
think also I started also
Yeah.
looking at Kafka.
Mm.
Haven't really made anything in production,
Yeah.
but Kafka is more like an event streaming service, which is also open source.
Okay.
Of course, if you want to manage service, you run it in Azure. But in essence, like in core, a service bus is a queue. So once you
Yes.
process the message in a queue, it's completed. It's done. If something goes wrong, it goes to a dead letter queue, which you can reprocess again. Whereas an event streaming service sort of just publishes these messages to all the consumers, and even consumers, like for example in Kafka, there's a much more similar product. I think it's Event Hub in Azure. That's much more similar in Kafka, and they're publishing events. You can listen and you could do whatever we want with that events. You can also just listen to a specific sort of queries. So you only receive the events that you need, but it will just be there. The events is just there. When a new subscriber comes and subscribe to whatever event message in the service, then they will still get the events. Whereas in the queue, after it has been processed and completed, if you start up another trigger, for example, a function, then it's gone, then it's done, it's completed. So that's one
Mm.
major difference. So it serves a very, very kind of very different purpose in a way.
Mm.
But Kafka is also a little bit like not only a publisher, but also a messaging. There's also a messaging element to Kafka. So on that account, maybe they have some similarities. We can look into that. And
Yes.
yeah, for the next session, with a full session, maybe it's something that we can discuss.
Yes,
But
a lot of
anyway,
interesting topics about Azure. It's like time. It's like our time doesn't like it's so short, but maybe next time we can have longer sessions.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for this, for doing this, Jonah. And I hope this is not the last time. We're so happy to have you. And I will see you later when we do the
Yes. Thank
chismisan.
you.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
question.
everyone. Yeah.
We'll just take like 1 minute break and then I will be back with my own session. I'm going to try to keep it short so we can head on with the talk show because I think we're just about 10 minutes over time, but that's an accumulated because we like talking here. So it doesn't matter. We're cozy on a Saturday morning, afternoon. So we will be fine. I'll
Yes.
see you right back in about a minute. Thank you, Jonah.
Thank you.
Hello. Well, I'm back. Thank you for staying. all the way towards the end. I am the last speaker for the day for the lightning tech lightning tech show, whatever. But afterwards, as I mentioned, for those of you who just got into the stream, and for those of you who just maybe jumped around and watching the recording, we had 4 lightning talks, and at the end we will have the talk show. So please stick around. Let me try to do this. This is the first time I am doing both broadcasting on one screen and then doing the talk and sharing on the other screen. So I hope it's working. So I'd like to introduce myself again. My name is Marilag Dimatulak, and I am the co-founder of Dewise. It's a company that I started about 4 years ago with my partner, and it's a software engineering company based in Denmark and Manila. So so we do mostly cloud applications for enterprises, but we also build our own mobile applications. I'm also an Azure MVP, and you can get in touch with me on Twitter or on Facebook. And as you know, I also started the Azure User Group Manila. So I created this meetup page or a meetup group, and about 3 years ago, where there were a couple, maybe even less than 10 members, 20, in our first event back in what is it now? Maybe 2016, 17, no, 17. Yeah, I think it was January. I was in Manila. The first event was in Pasig. And then we brought, I was so excited. We brought cakes and a lot of snacks and food and everything, because I thought like about 100 people signed up and 20 people came, or maybe even less. And half of them were my teammates. So kudos to my teammates who have been very supportive. But I'm very passionate about the community. I'm also very active with the Azure User Group in Denmark. I don't know. It's just because I think part of me really feel like the community is such an important part of our job. For the longest time, because I moved to Denmark and I am far away from my team, I normally sit alone working in front of my computer. And then at some point I got fed up and I say, I have to be out. I have to be with people. I have to learn from other people. I have to teach other people. And that's how it sparked my journey towards being active in the community. So this is the first time we're doing this live, as like I mentioned, and I'm so happy. And I think it's a success. So thanks to you guys who keep supporting the Azure User Group Manila. What do I really do? I'm a solutions architect. So I work a lot with enterprise customers, helping them design and develop applications in Azure, and also really guiding them towards their journey in the cloud. Not so much on the infrastructure side, but more on the software engineering side. And I have a wonderful team, very excellent team, both in Manila and Denmark, that helps me through that journey. The one thing that I want to talk about today is my CosmosDB story. There's a lot of services in Azure that I really like working with. And I'm not picking CosmosDB because I think that's the most technically awesome, but I think it's because it's very close to my heart. I have a story about how I got started into Azure, and the one thing that really, gets me through it was my experience with CosmosDB when I was very, very new. So at the time, so I'm going to try to make this less technical, but more like about the story and my journey in working with this kind of technology, right? So at the time, we just started our new company about 4 years ago, and we were just 2 people here in Denmark and 2 people in Manila. And we were just very small team, and we're dealing with, with these big solutions. And I didn't know anything about Azure or databases in a cloud databases, or how to, maybe I have a little bit of experience with deploying applications on the cloud, but with CosmosDB, I started with absolutely zero knowledge of it. But it kind of, at that time, because we just started the new company, it's sort of like a make or break for us. We have to do it right. And even though we are taking a big risk picking a technology that I didn't have so much experience with, or I have zero experience with, we have to make that jump. We have to make that leap, because it would kind of, it meant the survival for our company at the time. So even though I was scared because we're getting into our new project and a new customer, and actually our very very first customer, and then picking like a technology that I don't know about, that can be quite daunting. But then I said we have to pick the right technology for the right solution. So it doesn't matter, we just have to learn it. And that's how I started with CosmosDB, because our first project was to build some sort of an advanced form builder, wherein, as you know, if you build some questionnaires, I think many of you have tried using SurveyMonkey, right? So we tried to build something like that for our enterprise customer. And it's so they can kind of design their questionnaire that they will use for risk assessment of their sales contracts. So it's a big thing. It's a global company, and they want this highly customized. They can't use whatever is out in the market because that doesn't fit their requirements. So we had to build it from scratch. And as you know, as I tried to look into the solution and understand the whole data model of it, I realized, okay, this data is very dynamic. And what I mean is this data structure is changing. So if you design a form, one form looks very different from the other. One form has different properties and then the other form. So like if you have different form templates, they're not similar. So that means I have to store data with very different structure, even though they're the same entity. They're both forms, but one form probably requires a questionnaire about contract amount or questions about your sales force, your workforce. But then another form, because another template, because that's being used for another scenario, doesn't need those properties. So I have to think out of the box, because I was very very used to using relational database. So I worked a lot with SQL Server at the time, and I felt like if I do this in SQL Server, then it's going to be maybe quite complex for me. But so what I decided was that I've heard about this NoSQL databases. I haven't worked with it at that time, but then, well, let me just have a look. So another thing that was required for this project was that we had to, because it has to be a web application, but with global users, because this was an enterprise company. All their users are seated all over across the globe, and they have to serve all of them at the same time. And that means that I definitely have to do something about that. My infrastructure can't just be deployed in one place, because otherwise I would have all sorts of problems and latencies and that. So those were the requirements for our first ever project for Device, which could have, if we failed that one, I was pretty sure that it would have been very disheartening for me. So as I have mentioned, so when I dabbled around this dynamic structure, so I came across the concept of schemaless database. Schemaless database, it's not new, but at that time for me it was. And so I had to really spend a lot of time trying to understand what schemaless is based on schema. I was so used to structuring my database with my entity relationship diagram, and then defining all my columns, defining all my relationships, and defining all these properties and how they work together in the tables, in a database. And then I know that once I have designed that, and once I have deployed my database, that's it. That's how it will work. If I need to make a change, I have to do some redeployment or change the schema of my database. So it cannot just adapt to random changes or different structure, or you would end up with tables that have a lot of columns that's not being used by another entity. So that's where I think, okay, this way of structuring database wouldn't fit my requirements. So I went and started looking at what the schemaless database is about. So that essentially means I kind of have to move my mindset, my framework that is so built into my head, because in college you were taught by your professors is like you have to normalize, and then all of a sudden I came across the schemaless denormalized form of data, which is, as you can see here, is one of the most common NoSQL database, which is just a JSON document database. So I have to move from this kind of thinking where I would have tables and properties and relationships between them. And then each of these entities are residing in different tables in my database. Whereas when I move from this to the schemaless concept, then I realized that all of this data can also be put together in some sort of a tree structure with nodes and children to illustrate or model the relationships between them. And then they can be in one file, and I can store that file, and that would be my database item. And okay, I thought that worked really good for my scenario. And I know, for example, in a form, typically I would have a form table and a questions table and responses table, but they're just one entity related to each other. So in a denormalized schemaless world, I can put that here, and then I can have an array of objects underneath each of these properties and put them together. And not only that, I learned in my schemaless journey that I can also, in every record or in every item, in every JSON document, I can play around with these properties. I can change. The other form can have questions and responses and then sub-questions, but other forms don't have to have that. And that's not going to break my code as long as I handle it properly. But the database will just accept it. Or my database just has to accept the fact that the entities you're trying to save to it or persist to it looks very different from each other. And that for me was liberating when I started designing my database structure for this solution. So talking about the other requirement for that first project, that because we have global users, so I don't only have to think about the structure, I also have to think about the infrastructure behind my database. So the database is like, for me, it's the heart of the application, because it's, I mean, almost all the operations we do against our application ends up in the database. So your database has to be very, very efficient. So if you have global users, and imagine that your database, your physical database, is just residing in one part of the world, then you would have latencies in all the other parts of the world. And that's not good enough, because you have some sort of a contract and service level agreement with your customers that it has to be fast and it has to be consistent. So, well, because that company that we worked for was traditional back then, they haven't really invested a lot at that time with their cloud journey, or they were just starting. So they weren't really so much familiar yet with cloud databases. They haven't really used it. But I could have opted with just rolling out my own NoSQL databases and then running it in servers or virtual machines in the data centers that my customer is using, and manage it myself, and manage replication and geo-distribution of my database across the globe. But I mean, I don't know how to do that. I don't have those skills, and that's time consuming, and that's also dangerous. Would I have to worry about, what failover and clustering and all these things? And I'm like, I'm just a simple developer. I can't have time to do this. And we're a very small company, so we can't really recommend that. And honestly, the whole application back then didn't also really warrant for that kind of setup. So I said, let's go for the cloud database. And that's how I came across CosmosDB. At that time, was actually called something else. It was called DocumentDB. So it was like, what is this DocumentDB? I just started Googling NoSQL database, Azure cloud, because I already know Azure back then. And it's like, it popped up on my search result, DocumentDB. Oh, okay, what is it? And then I started learning more and more about it. So it has changed a little bit now, but my experience with it was kind of like this. So I just went on the Azure portal and then started trying, okay, let me just create that. I heard about that DocumentDB. Let me just create that. So at the time it was CosmosDB. DocumentDB, but now it's CosmosDB, obviously, because they have rebranded it about maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, where they also introduced a lot of other more advanced features, because DocumentDB before was just JSON document database, but now they have tons of other stuff. So I just picked up that resource and started creating, what can I do with this? Typically this is how you kind of get engaged with the technology. You can't just read. You have to go, at some point you have to go in and click the buttons and try it out. So now I realize, oh, wait, okay, I have to pick a subscription. Okay, I have to put in resource group. That's pretty standard. Oh, what's an account name? Oh, because maybe most of the, resources in, or, typically in a database, I started reading about what an account name is. So normally, before you create your databases and your, what you would call collections in CosmosDB, they have to be within an account, and an account is where you sort of manage all your collections and databases. So there are stuff that are account level management, like for example, geo-replication, some security, connectivity, endpoints, and many more are managed in an account level. So it's just like provisioning your server, but cloud, right? So I just put the name, and then it's like, okay, you have to pick an API. A what? An API. Why do I have to do that? So, well, I realized upon reading that an API, of course, is because in CosmosDB, at that time, I only have, I think, the SQL, but now I have to pick API because in CosmosDB, it's so super cool that it's not just you can model your data not just as a document database, but you could, which is now here called normally called the SQL, but you could also use graph based on the Gremlin graph. So I can actually model my data if I needed to into a graph, or I can use a simple table. So if you've been using Azure storage tables and then you want to shift to a bit more advanced infrastructure or service, then that's a good fit. And then I could also do a very, very fast table family kind of a structure. Or if I have been working with MongoDB, which is another very, very popular, very efficient NoSQL database, then maybe I can put MongoDB API on top of the CosmosDB. So I get to experience all the advantages of having CosmosDB, the CosmosDB infrastructure, which I will show you a little bit later, but still work with my MongoDB code, my MongoDB approach, my way of thinking. So I don't have to, it's really just like if I have a code running against MongoDB, it's like a one-on-one translation. And then there's really very, very short learning curve for me. Instead of running my own MongoDB in the cloud and such. So those are just options. There are tons of options when it comes to solutions, right? And the other ones are pretty much, standard. So I created that. So I have now I have a CosmosDB account. And okay, what do I do now? Then I started looking at, okay, does this thing solve my problems? First of all, I needed to be globally distributed because we have a global customer. It's like, oh, I learned that CosmosDB has this turnkey global distribution. Turnkey means like in a click, it will replicate to another region. And I was that's fantastic. So I started playing around with that. So I started looking, how do I do that? Of course, now I could you could do that in code, but then here it's so easy. You can see if I go to replicate data globally, you could just choose your regions. And in the beginning, you could only write your data in one region and the rest will replicate across the globe as read regions. But maybe a year ago or a year and a half, they also introduced a multi-master wherein if you're, for example, sitting in Manila and then you write something or you submit an operation or you submit a request on your web app, that's also maybe routed to that region. And then that would automatically, if you're using the CosmosDB SDK in your code, then that would automatically be routed to a instance or a replica of CosmosDB closest to you. And that really makes it ultra fast, and that's very advantageous for us. And I don't even have to do anything other than click these tiny cute buttons. So that was very easy. But I know that in any global distribution scenario, distributed system scenario, would always have to, especially in databases, you probably ask me, what about, consistency? So if I write something in North Europe, when is it going to get into Southeast Asia? So CosmosDB takes care of that with different modes. And you can read about this in the documentation, the difference between strong and eventual, which are the common ones. So strong is like it will not be completed until it has written to all its replicas, whereas eventual is that it will tell you that it's okay, I have accepted it, I've written it on my master, but then at some point, all the other regions will be updated. So these are the things that I needed to think about when I was designing a global application. And then, of course, I thought about, okay, the security. So I tried learning about that. So you find a lot in a documentation about how you can set up firewalls and put that in a virtual network in Azure. Or now you can even have private endpoint connection. So if you want that to only be accessible within your internal hybrid setup, then that's also possible. So there's a bunch of things. So now that I have kind of learned this really nice nifty features of CosmosDB, and I'm like, yes, I'm in. I'm gonna have to use that in my project. So now the next step is, how do I build solution? What's the next step? So because we are .NET developers, of course, obviously we were building an ASP.NET application. It wasn't core back then, and using C#. So I kind of try to find out what kind of how do I code. And of course, there are also other steps that I need to think about before I even start coding. Then there's also design. In any kind of database you're using, you always have to think about your model, and your model. And that gave me a lot of flexibility. But I would tell you that if you're coming from a relational database world, then it does require some shift in the way you look at data and the way you look at things, but it will be liberating afterwards. So that's what happened to me. Like the one that I showed you, you saw that I have to translate my tables into the concepts that is more NoSQL-like. So for example, I don't have to separate all my entities into two separate tables. I can just put them all together in one record and then actually put them in one container. That's how you do it in CosmosDB. But there's also many other things that I needed to think about when modeling my data now that I have it just in just one document. So I think about all the relationships. How do I do many-to-many relationships or one-to-many relationships and such, and how do I run my queries? So just to give you an illustration of the different data models that I came across with, that I play around with, and there's no one formula on how to model your data in a NoSQL world or in CosmosDB, but you have to be aware that all your decisions for this would, of course, be affect your performance and the way your application works, right? So right now I have one model where everything is in one file in form. You have the title, and then you have all the questions, and in each questions you have responses. But then I realized I could also separate that, so I can have one document with just the information about the form, and then I can have a relationship between that form and then the questions and the responses, just by saying in this document I have a form ID which is the same as that one, and then I have it separate. And there's advantage to that kind of model, because if you see here, one thing that I want to emphasize is here you have each document, you have a limit with the size of the document, and you don't want to reach that if your document all of a sudden becomes very large. So if you have a sort of an array of objects that is unbounded, so it means you don't know how many you will have, it's a good idea to separate this. So this, I'm just illustrating one of the things that I learned. You don't just make a decision and then just structure your data. Take time to understand your model. And then, of course, code, because like I said, we were .NET developers, so it's instinctive for us to just use the .NET SDK for CosmosDB, which you can download as a NuGet package or install as a NuGet package in your code. And then you can just very easily start connecting to your database via their SDK. You just need to pass some endpoint, some authorization key, which you will get from the database. You can store in a key vault. And voila, you are already connected. And you are also, you could do all the normal database operations like creating the collections via the code and upserting records, creating records, deleting records or items, or yeah, all these things. And you can do all the queries. And because this is the SQL API, so the query language was so familiar to me with SQL, but I learned also that there are some differences. It's not the full T-SQL like you're used to, but it's very CosmosDB specific SQL statements and functions, built-in functions that you can use. So I just had to learn that, but it took no time. This part was very easy because that's one thing that I really, really loved about CosmosDB, is that it was They had amazing documentation, and then they have an amazing team behind them. So it was so easy for developers to just get onboarded right away. So I suggest you try it. I'm gonna try to not go into much details with this, but just for the record, I learned a lot about reducing cost and how does pricing work in CosmosDB, because you don't pay for every transaction. You actually try to reserve a throughput. A throughput could be, for every operation that you commit or you do against your database, that has a price, and you sort of reserve that amount. And then because there's cost involved, it was a good discipline for me. And that's also, a good developer can't just code without thinking about the cost of that code, whether it's in cost of maintenance or cost of running the code. So it's very good practice for me to also think about, okay, how do I optimize my database so that I would reach that request unit allowed that I reserved. And then that also means looking into your code and your model and looking at how to optimize database operations. How often do I connect? How large is my database? How complex are my queries? So I have to think about that. And the other thing that I also have to really understand is, I don't know if I can show much of it here, is that I understand that I have to really look at the metrics, because this is not my database. This is a database in the cloud. I have access to how many transactions and requests are going through and how many of them are getting throttled because I only reserve X number of throughput, but I'm already exceeding it. When the 429 is, that's when you get throttled. How many times? How big is my storage? And all these things that are also important. And it kind of sort of shaped me as a developer and taught me that these things are also important more than anything else. I'm very excited to try things like change feed and events. I have dabbled a little bit around that with CosmosDB. And then now CosmosDB just recently announced that they could connect to Azure Synapse, which makes it so easy to do live, almost real-time analytics using your CosmosDB data. So if you are working with analytics and machine learning and all this big data manipulation and reporting, also with Power BI connected, this is probably something that you want to look for, because before that, it's CosmosDB is a transactional database, so you don't typically, for very, very large analytics, you don't connect directly to CosmosDB. You need to have some transformation pipeline into your warehouse. But for this one, it's just almost like real-time transformation. So I'm very excited to try that. So from zero knowledge and to building enterprise apps, that was my journey. And it's not as, well, it's been daunting, it's difficult, but it really is possible. So I would love to hear your CosmosDB story when you get there. And and maybe next time it will be your story that we will listen to. So thank you very much. That's my talk. Do you have any questions for me? Maybe I can put some of the ladies with me here on the stream. Hello, Angelica. I'm just going to start.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Adrienne.
Hello.
And
Hi.
hi, Jonah.
Hi.
Hi, Arla. This is my colleague, Arla. She's also joining us for the talk show. I think we can just proceed with our talk, chit-chat, maybe spend like half an hour or something. What time is it there, Adrienne?
It is almost 11 p.m.
It's late.
Okay.
Did you have dinner then? So then you're going to be late.
It's the weekend for us, so.
Yeah. Oh, thank you about that. That's why I'm trying to schedule this during the weekend, because that's where we can match.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're interested also in doing some talks for Azure User Group Denmark, then we can, shift the timetable around. Yeah. All right. So welcome, ladies. Thank you very much. I think this has been very exciting for me, at least. First time doing this, first time having all these girls talking very heavy technical stuff, and then now talking about some more real stuff. I think I want to start with, let's talk about how we get started in tech. So, How did you get started? Let's start maybe with Angelica.
Oh,
Oh, right.
all right. Yes, yes. Um, well, actually, I had this two two things that I'm passionate about. So one is music and one is tech. So I had to choose between two. So after I graduated computer engineering technology in TUP Manila, I enrolled in a music college. So after that, after 1 year in music college, that's where I tried finding a job. So I was just applying for any tech related job, and then I got this job at a logistics company here in the Philippines. And then that's how I started my journey as a software engineer. So in they had this exam, then there's a portion for SQL, SQL questions. Then I don't know SQL that time, so it wasn't taught in the university. So the subjects are mostly electronics. So we were not really taught to how SQL programming. So I didn't have any answers during that exam. I just put if you get me back for an interview, I'll be able to answer this question. So they got me back for an interview, and then I said, I already know how to answer those questions. So they said, no, it's not and I started my job as a software engineer, and I also had good mentors along the way that like they always tell me kaya mo yan, kaya mo yan. So it's like those people really help because
Mm.
it can be intimidating because I don't know everything. So those people who share you the links how they started programming, it really means a lot to me now where I am right now. So yes, that's how I started my journey as a software engineer.
That's very nice. And that mentoring thing, I think we can all agree about that. So let's
Yeah.
keep it going. Adrienne.
My journey started. I didn't even know that I wanted to be in tech at all. A lot of the stories and classmates I've had, they're like, I've been programming since I was 6, and I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
That wasn't my dream. My dream was actually to become a pastry chef. That was like what I wanted
oh,
to do. And then as I started going to college, how I got into tech was, well, when I went to college here in Vegas, I needed to find a job to help me pay for school because I had student loans. So when I was looking for all the student job board, the one that was the highest paying was working at the IT help desk. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it because it's the one that paid the most. So I interviewed there, I got the job, and that was really my first real kind of experience anywhere in tech. And I think a lot of people do that too. They kind of start out in the help desk role, but I think it's super important because it was there that I honed my communication skills, my problem solving skills. That's where you really have to talk through with a person and really hold their hand and get to the root of the problem, because you're either troubleshooting something that's wrong with their laptop, or you just have to listen and see what it is that they need, and then you see if you can help them. So that was really how I first got in. And then of course, how I got into development was, well, when I was working at the help desk, an internship opened up for the software development department for the university. And of course, when I looked at it, I saw, oh, this one actually helps pay for like 6 credits a semester. So I said, oh, I need to do this one because it's, a little bit more. So then again, I interviewed, and studied really hard, and then I got that job. And then there was where I had my first foray into development. And it was very weird because this was the only job I had where the entire team I had was all women. And I never had that ever again, which is kind of like good and bad, but I'm really happy that I had that experience first, because it wasn't weird to me. All of the senior engineers were all women, and I could talk to them, ask them about something. And it was only after I moved on and continued and pursued a career in software engineering that the teams where I was the only woman. So I think that went off with a good start. But yeah, that's how I got into software engineering.
All right. Thank you. How about you, Arla?
So for me, I graduated as an IT, and then before my graduation, I was hired with Menimdo, which is the previous company with Madi. So she's my colleague for almost 9 years now. So I started as a SharePoint developer. So at first I was just working with the designer, and then I learned to love the programming after so many years of just mentoring from Maddie. So that's how I started with the technology.
Thank you, Arla. Yeah, I've seen Arla grow. So it's nice that you stayed with us all throughout this journey. She was the one I was talking about, like one of the two teammates I had in the Philippines when we were just starting. And it's quite hard when you started a company to get people because they don't feel secure if you're small and you're just starting out and you don't have any projects. So we're glad that we have very loyal teammates that stayed with us through this. So thanks, Arla. And Jonah?
Yes, my story. Actually, my childhood dream was to become a lady engineer because back in the Philippines, I think I want to be different. Like I want a job that makes a difference. So even though if I'm a woman, it doesn't stop me that I can do a job that stereotype for men only. So I wanted to be an engineer, but with circumstances in my life, like with family, that my parents couldn't send me to an engineering like course in college. So I took the initiative to take an exam for a scholarship, and I got the opportunity to choose computer science. So I became a scholar, and then I thought, can I really do computer stuff? But I think so. I decided to study computer programming as a scholar, and then I started to to build my interest in technology. So when I graduated with computer science, I learned a lot of stuff. Like I started my first programming language in Visual Basic. So at that time, we had like tube computers, and then we had to do computer typing in the Philippines, and that's how my interest in technology started. And I also have experience in call centers, working as tech support for American companies. So I really like the idea in working. Like helping other people while you're in the distance and helping them with their computer problems. And then when I moved to Sweden like 9-10 years ago, I call center is not so popular here. If you know, in the Philippines, if you're very good in English, then you get a job in a call center. But in Sweden, it's not common to talk English. So I had to learn to talk Swedish, but I can't do like tech support job. So I decided I still have my passion in programming. So I decided to study computer system development here in Sweden for about 3 to 4 years until I got my first job as a software developer. So I've been working as a software developer for 4 or 5 years, and I really love what I do, and I'm motivated to inspire others to work in this branch. For it's exciting and there are a lot of opportunities. So that's how my journey was.
Thanks, Jonah. But I think we have something in common here. When we were younger, we weren't really sure. Did we want
Mm,
tech or not? Because it's a little bit strange. None of my friends are in tech, and none of my female relatives in tech. At least not for me. I didn't have any role model in my family working in tech, and so sort of it's something that's maybe here as an idea, but wasn't really growing. You know.
mm,
Um, and then maybe because we really like it, we sort of levitated into something around tech. Our mind kind of led us into it. And if we sort of just shut it down completely, we're not going to get into it. But then we had our first finger on the keyboard and coding, and it could have been very easy to give up because it's difficult, but we didn't. And then all of a sudden you sort of, it materialized that more and more you fall in love with it. And that's how I and me, I didn't also want to, not that I didn't think about being a programmer. I kind of actually wanted to be a writer. I still do, like writer of fiction or a journalist. But now I'm writing code, so I kind of relate those two. But it wasn't like that. But for me, it was also the first time my parents bought in a computer in the house. My brother didn't want me to touch it, but I did. I sneaked out. It's like, what is this thing doing? And then I played around with it. And now we're here talking to the world about our tech stories. So that's great. So for those of you who are still not very sure about getting into tech, or the idea is quite vague, give it a try. And maybe you will also end up loving it, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about, let's talk a little bit about who's, well, I don't know how much time we have because we can talk and talk, but there are kind of a lot of topics I want to talk about. But maybe because now we have something in common. We've come from the same culture. We're Filipinas, and that influences us in one way or another, no matter what we want to do. We don't want to stereotype Filipinas, not at all, but we cannot avoid that our culture is engraved in us. And how does this, play out in your profession in tech where you are right now? So, for example, maybe it's a little bit like, let's start maybe with Adrienne. You grew up, or you were born in Vegas, right?
I was born in California.
Okay, yeah.
I've been everywhere, but yeah, most of my um, childhood and adolescence was in America, but I did live in Philippines for 2 years. So thankfully, so that's why I can still understand Tagalog and speak a little bit.
Yeah, you're actually very good.
So,
good.
no, it's something that's very important to me. It's almost one of the anchors of my identity in tech. Whenever I see everyone kind of gathering together, there's like within the subset of women in tech, I really want to push the Filipina in tech, and I want to show other Filipinos that there is another job other than something in the medical field. And I know I wasn't alone. Most of my family is all in the medical field, and when I started getting to that age where they were asking, "Oh, what do you want to do? Are you gonna follow in your mom's footsteps?" I'm like, "No." Every time I hear stories about the hospital, I don't want to do it. I don't want to study for this long to be a doctor. I don't want to do nursing. It just was not interesting to me at all. So part of what I want to do now, like when I go speak at conferences, and I'm sure you've seen this, Marlag, I try to infuse some kind of Filipino examples in my talks if they make sense. So I did that in one of my talks where I was explaining function patterns in Azure, but I used like examples of how to create lumpia. And so I dedicate a little bit of time in my talks to explain, oh, do you know what this is? I'll show a GIF of it and say, this is lumpia. It's like a Filipino egg roll. And like I try to do that as much as I can when I can. So it's the same when I post on Instagram. I'll mention something a little bit about being Filipino. But I think it's very important to keep that because it is part of my identity. It's something important, and I want other Filipinos to know that if they are just as unsure and they're like, well, I really don't think I want to do anything in the medical field, but they don't know what another option is, that this is important to me to show that representation because there is another option, and it's actually very, very open to Filipinos abroad because it is, you just need a good internet connection in a computer, and it still has a lot of the benefits that you would get from nursing, right? A lot of people go to nursing because it's a guaranteed job. Well, I feel like tech is the same way, and so yeah, it's important to me, and I continue to make sure it's well known whenever I get the chance to.
Yeah, that's really great, and that's how I also got to know Adrienne, because I was we weren't introduced or anything. Nobody, of course, told me that, oh, there's another Filipino in that conference. But then, of course, I was browsing the speakers. It's like, oh, there's another Filipina. I have to get in touch, you know. But I think that's our nature. I don't know if the other cultures do that,
Yeah.
maybe, but it's not like, yeah, oh, there's another American. Maybe they do, but there are a lot of them. So
I got
easy
excited.
one, yeah, on the list. So it was really nice, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy about that. Yeah. What about you? Let's take one from who's actually still in Manila right now. Laika.
Yeah, so I can actually relate because when I visited Australia, because of Singstra, so there's like just a Filipino signal. You can just detect the Filipinos around you.
Yeah,
It's innate. It's innate. So we just maybe we're just that aware that we're all over the world. So yeah, one here, it's amazing. Technology is very amazing because it's still wonderful for me to think about that I'm working with IoT for other countries, yet I'm here in the Philippines. So I love Philippines. So as much as possible, I want to stay here and just work for other countries or work all over the world with just internet and my laptop, of course. So yeah, working as a Filipina, I think we can bit relate like why they love Filipino nurses because the way we care and the way we can relate to other cultures. Maybe it's just because something historical about it because we tend to be multicultural. We adapt very fast in the different culture around the world, and also I don't know. It's like connecting with the other culture. It's amazing because I get to know French culture. So I totally enjoy working with my French colleagues in my first project, Azure IT project in Europe. So I had good memories working with them, and like the rapport is good, although we haven't seen each other actually. So I don't know. It's like Filipinos are friendly. So
that's for sure. Many of us
uh,
are. Yeah, but I like the way that you mentioned that you actually really like to stay in the Philippines, and if you can, you would work there. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of Filipinos out there in Filipinas that would love to do the same, and we just see you could build your career in our
yes,
country. It is possible. I actually wanted the same, but I had a very different story, a bit sidetracked. That's why I got here. um, but
yeah,
um, but
I
when I was younger, I also wanted to just stay in the Philippines if that could be my choice. And that's why with my story about me being Filipina is when I moved to Denmark, I said I can't just let go of Philippines.
yeah, yeah,
I,
same,
I have to be a
same
little bit, I have to keep my connection, first of all, because my family is there and my
family.
friends. Yeah, I love it. I don't want to be just a tourist that I have to go and visit there. I want to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wanted to you know um, create something there or start up something there. And I remember that when I was in computer science in my computer science university, my friends are always telling me, oh, you're probably going to go abroad and work abroad. And I'm like, no, I would stay here. I would start I'd start a company here. So I felt a little guilty leaving because kind of like eating my own
Oh,
words. So what I said, no, I'm not going to let go. So that's why I started the company. Yes. So when I moved here, I started with a company called like that does SharePoint development and SAP and integration. And it's like, you know what? We have a lot of really good developers in the Philippines. Why don't we
yeah.
start up there? And then they trusted me. It's like this girl who just moved in here wanted to start a company, and it started with one guy, and then Arla came as the second employee, and then we're just going and growing. It's been such a journey, and that means I get to travel to the Philippines before, like I really miss it 3 times, at least 3 to 4 times a year, and my
Oh,
heart is there, and my every day I talk to the team
yeah.
there, so it's really, really, really a big part of me, and I get to bring that learning. And I think 50% of my job is just explaining to my teammates in the Philippines that this is how it is in Denmark, and then in Denmark explaining to them, but this is how we do it in the Philippines. So you guys better understand each other because you know I'm gonna go crazy if you clash, but it works really well. So, but this sort of just trying to make it more inclusive and understanding, no matter what culture it is, whether it's Filipino or other
Yep.
cultures, and whether it's Danish, Scandinavian, or other cultures, there's always a way to connect them,
Yeah.
to harmonize them. It just takes work, it takes work, and just be willing to do that work because don't give up. What about and then Arla? So Arla's a very different story. So she's been in the Philippines and now she's moving here. How does that feel for
Yep.
you?
Well, for me, I'm used to traveling, so I'm used to meeting people and experience a little bit of their culture. So I guess one of the uh, things that I love with Filipinos are like they're so adaptive that they can just do anything and adapt to other people. Sometimes they just want to learn new things and just go with the flow. So I'm just like that kind of a person. So I guess for me at first, I like based on my experience, I am really not into programming, but I'm just the kind of person that I love to learn new things. So at as years go by, I learned to love being in, working with technology and learning something new every day.
Good. And now you're going to be learning how to speak Danish very soon. So, well, good luck with that journey. And Jonah, you in Filipina in
Okay.
Sweden.
Yeah, how is it being a Filipina developer in Sweden? It's actually I'm very, even though I lived in Sweden for like almost 10 years now, I try to like just like Adrienne, I try to be proud of my identity as a Filipina. As far as I know, I don't know anybody else that's a Filipina and a developer do the same thing as I do in the Sweden. But I hope, but through our collaboration right now, we will like we'll gather all the Filipinas that are still hiding in their closets or something. But I'm very proud to be here. And after I finished my studies in here in Sweden, when I studied programming, I was the only Filipina, and my classmates were Swedish, and I had to learn the programming at the same time, learn the language. So it was actually it's like different to be like the only Filipina, and at the same time it's not so much other female in the class. And even at my first job also, I was the only female developer in the class, in my workplace. So it's a challenge to be like a Filipina coming from a different culture, and at the same time you have to adapt to the Scandinavian culture that they think differently. But I have adapted with that. But at the same time, every time we discuss things like a curious about Filipino culture, I'm very open and proud to share to them the characteristic we have as Filipinos. So I think one of the things that my colleagues and my friends have noticed is that I'm very ambitious type and hardworking. You know how it is. Like we Filipinos, they like to work hard. Like if we want something, we really have to work hard for it. We're used to it. It's part of our culture. We study hard to get good grades, good job. So for some like where the Swedish people, they're like laid back and they want to relax. So I'm trying to loosen up, or like to relax also. Like I don't do too much Filipino, like by the book, you know, and be like Swedish, do the Swedish. I'm doing a mix of things, but at the same time, I don't want to. I'm actually dual citizenship, so I don't want to lose my identity and citizenship as Filipino. So I'm doing multitasking to not just be a mentor to Filipinas, but also mentor to Swedish young women here. So I'm flexible. So I want to make a difference. Yeah,
Wow,
that's my
that's
story.
really, really also inspiring. And I totally get you with that culture of just wanting to work hard all the time, which is a lot of stereotypes. I'm going to put it out on the table because they would say that, stereotypes, Filipinos are lazy. Not sure you haven't
No.
met one if you think that. I would just say, but it goes for, like I said, say, Filipinos or other culture, we have this thing that we want to keep. But I think it's about striking the balance between also assimilating with others or integrating with others, just being open up your world and your horizon, right? So, but you also, I like that you segue into ambition, because that's another fun topic with women in tech. Um, I try to ask around. It's like, why do you think that there are not that many women in tech? And I get a lot of different answers, and I don't want to go through those answers, because then we need a whole day. But one thing that really strikes me is when someone tells me that it's because probably women are just less ambitious. I'm a very calm person. I don't want to get mad, but we're going to have to talk. But instead of being negative about that statement, I'd like to talk about ambitions. Let's tell the world what are our ambitions, right? We have ambitions. We're very ambitious. So maybe who's the youngest amongst us? Can I reveal? Maybe in the private
Reveal the age.
if you're not comfortable, let's type it in the private chat. I am.
Reveal our age.
Yeah. So
we have a winner.
we have a winner, like the youngest. Not so much, but
What's the question again?
well, about your ambition.
Ambition.
What are your greatest ambitions? I'd like to hear, or we'd like to hear.
Um, I don't know. It's like, I had this roadmap in the past 5 years. So I just know like where I want to be right now, and I am where I want to be right now. But currently, I don't have anything really planned like for the next 5 years. So I'm still thinking about it. But where I am right now is like how I see myself in tech. So at first, I laid down a very generic foundation of skills. Like I got C sharp, I got APIs, I got JavaScript. I was able to do web, mobile. I was like, I wanna learn everything. It's like the thrill of learning and making it work. So I had fun with that, and then I was able to. I'm not sure like the ambition thing is. I mean, when you say ambition, it's like something really fancy for me. So what I mean, it's like I'm not really sure if I'm ambitious in a sense. Like I just want to try things out. Like for example, this one. So so I'm half afraid. I'm half want to face my fear. So I don't know. It's just like I just try to set goals, time bound goals, and I try to achieve them on like a 5 year thing. So
Mm.
is that ambitious? I don't know.
Oh
I
well,
just
the moment she
Kind
said
of.
roadmap, well, okay, she's pretty, she's pretty heavy on the ambition with the roadmap thing. It's like with technology, our roadmap release of
yeah,
release.
Road.
it's like
Yeah.
there's a release roadmap of my life. So yeah, it's like I learned it from the university. So there's like just one professor that I had. Like, this is your assignment in software analysis design. You need to lay down your plans in life in the next 5 years. So okay, so that inspired me to do a roadmap.
That's good. It's always good to have a roadmap. And I also really like the way you said it, that you're half brave or half afraid, or
Half
something.
afraid,
And
half
that
afraid, and facing your fear. So this is it.
exactly. But when you're ambitious, if you're not, for me, if you're not afraid, then you're not ambitious enough. Isn't it correct?
Oh,
Yeah, if you're not afraid, then it's not ambitious, because your ambition, in my opinion, should scare you in one way or
oh,
another, because it's a big
okay. So
thing.
it's in the right track.
Yes. So don't fear your fears, because that's what I think makes you really realize that this is something like very big, because you're afraid to.
Bigger.
Yeah. I hate to reveal it, but I just realized I'm the oldest in this gang. God, it's so embarrassing. But that's okay. So if we take that one, then I'll go next with ambition. Well, I would say I didn't have a roadmap when I was your age. Actually, quite the opposite. I had two kids very early. I was only 20 when I had my first baby, my son. He's now 17. Scary enough, he's in that room probably listening and taking pictures of me. So earlier he was helping me. So, okay, speaking of ambitions, and maybe it's all about just the number one thing for me is to just give my kids a good life. And that thing kind of honestly scares me. That's the scariest thing I embarked on, just making sure that they have a good life, because there's a lot of things that entails giving your children good life. And whether it's your children or your family, if you love someone and you kind of want to give them the kind of happiness that they want, then it scares you because you might make the wrong decision. You're not might not be able to do that. And then when it happened to me at a very young age, then I only had one roadmap. I have to make sure that they have a good life. But in the process, I realized that also giving them good life takes a lot of sacrifices as well. When I moved here, they weren't with me in the beginning. Now they're coming. My daughter is also coming here to stay. So I had to travel a lot to the Philippines to see them, work, travel. So that's one of the sacrifices. But giving other people or your loved ones good life also means giving yourself a good life. So I believe in that. If I sacrifice everything about myself and my own ambitions, personal ambitions, then I won't be able to give it to them. So I tried this whole time, all this last yeah 18 years since I started working in tech. It's all about that, finding that balance. That has always been my ambition, and that's very hard. That scares me, finding the balance of being able to do everything in tech, like the work, the company, being in the community, arranging things like this. That takes time, that takes out time with the family, and all this balancing act is what I want to keep for kind of maybe the next couple of decades in my life, to always being able to put time on all those things that I love and balance them out while still staying sane. That's my ambition. So whatever it takes. Yeah, and then the next one, you guys are all well. Let's have Jonah. She's
Okay.
the next oldest. I'll drag it with me.
Second to the last. Yeah, for me, what's ambition? For me, ambition is like, it's not like just like Angelique, and she, like, it's not like, for me, it's not like a reaching a goal and have that's a highest rank. That's not for like for showing off, like to do the ranking. For me, ambition is like doing a job that you like, at the same time following your dreams. So I don't have roadmap like our youngest here, but I have like passions that I want to do, and God willing, if that's the will, then I would like to, like, I want to be a better developer or programmer, learn a lot about Azure. I'm really passionate about being better in developing apps and system with Azure. And then maybe in 10 years or 15 years, I want to be like a tech lead, leading other developers, while at the same time maintaining my passion in bringing in more women in tech, because there is we need more women. For I believe that if if we don't have that balance between gender gap and quality, it will be a different future for our kids and the future generation. So it'll be different. So it's good to have a like a female touch in the future. So that's one of my vision and my passion, and I can say that's my also my ambition. But we don't know. It's a journey there, and just like everyone, like we sometimes we get scared, sometimes we fall down, but we lift each other's up with like you guys, so we can help each other. So we're going to the same road.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Oh, well, your passion for mentoring, also, especially young people, it can be frustrating. I remember that in my kids' school back in the Philippines, they were supposed to open an IT elective, and then I found out from my kids that they closed it because there weren't that many students who wanted to get into that. So it must be really a joy for you to see that kids are actually interested in this. And I
Yes.
hope we get to continue, doing this,
Yes.
and maybe
So
some of our next meetup will target the younger, generation that will take the torch from
yes.
us.
I
Yeah,
was
that's really cool.
actually I was actually
Sorry.
thinking of buying Adrian's book and try to advertise it in Sweden, because in Sweden they're trying to like implement like programming into schools. So maybe I can help market her books, and it's like Filipina like developer branding. So
I won't say no to that.
yes, yes, yeah. So,
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful.
I guess,
Um,
Bali, that's really gonna be helpful if we're targeting young Filipinos,
mm,
especially those people or students outside Manila, because they don't really have that opportunity. So it's gonna be nice to have that.
yes.
yeah, that's also one ambition that I have, like putting up some scholarship
Mm,
programs where enterprises can kind of help us out
volunteer.
and extend this, the education to the lower, especially lower income families or families that are living outside of the cities that don't have the same opportunity when it comes to technology. It would be nice to be able to do that, to get to do that, right? So we can start with
Mm.
Philippines and
Yeah.
maybe who
Mm,
knows all over the world, right? So just to get the young people in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just would like to share with you girls that uh I are you familiar with Hapilan Tondo? So like yearly I go there to celebrate my birthday. So I try to think of something to share with them. So the last time I went there, I shared chinelas, so slippers,
mm,
and the timing was really good. So there was also like medical volunteers who are doing the warming, and like experiencing to be with these kids, like the smile on their faces. And then I would just like to think like, what if we digitally enable these kids to prepare their future? So that's really wonderful, like another step of helping the kids uh like be exposed in tech. So I was like, how about how will I be able to digitally enable them or skill them up?
I
So
can actually relate to you because for the last few years, I was doing projects like going to the remote places in the Philippines, especially in the zone, just going in the mountains, giving notebooks. So the problem with that is that we sometimes they don't have electricity, and they even don't have notebooks to write. So it's gonna be
mm.
hard for us to reach those places.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of work, but in case, I mean, this doesn't always apply to software engineering where you put more people, doesn't always translate that you build more high quality software. But when problems like this, put a little bit more people into it and put more resources into it, and then we can help out. If it's just that, when you do it, it's just the three of you and your friends, and less than 10 people trying to scale mountains and deliver notebooks. That's not enough. You need to get more into to do this. We can't help everyone, but if you can start with, especially like teaching tech to these kids or introducing them, sparking that joy,
mhm.
um, raising awareness,
Yes.
because this is the industry of our current times, and definitely the industry of our of our future, right? Because everything that's very important right now, especially the medical industry, it all relies on tech. So let's do more to help them.
Mm.
um Adrienne, what about you? What's ambition for you?
It's apt that we were talking about this. I've always wanted to do something to, one, bring more Filipinos into tech, and two, help the Filipinos in the Philippines. So, one of those goals, I don't know if you've seen, but there is a nonprofit. I forget their name. I think it's Laptops for Devs, but they have a very, very big community on Black Tech Twitter where they just collect either donations or have people send in their old laptops that they don't need anymore. And then they actually send these back to developers in Lagos, for those who just can't afford a laptop, or they use it in different ways for people who either want to learn how to code but can't afford one, or they send it to some centers that keep it, and then they have mini like coding dojos there for people who don't mind mentoring or teaching groups there, and then they just share the laptops there. And so that has always been something I wanted to bring to the Philippines. I mean, I see in my own closet, I have like two or three of my old laptops that are just sitting there, and I can easily wipe that and just donate it to the Philippines and have someone potentially change their life rather than it just collecting dust there. But I want to make it a little bit more formal. So having help like this with ladies like you, with getting more exposure, just with everybody in general, that's something I really, really want to do, because it's within my skill set and it's something I think can make a big impact. So that's like a big lifetime goal that if I ever achieve this, I would die happy. Um, Personally and like professionally, I would say I'm pretty proud of where I've come so far. I never had any of these goals in mind. Like I didn't have this roadmap that says I'm going to do this, I'm going to speak, and I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They all just kind of, the opportunities came up naturally in my career, and I just decided to jump on it. Like I could have been scared and was like, oh, this is too much work, I don't want to do this, but I decided to do it, and I'm so happy that I did. So I think the next big goal for me is to eventually become a keynote speaker somewhere, like in a really, really big conference. That's probably my next goal. Still a little bit to get there, but I think I can achieve it sometime soon, hopefully.
That's going to be very cool. I'm sure you're going to look really great on stage as a keynote speaker, and I hope I get to attend that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can
but we have a
yeah.
lot more of this ambition thing, and I noticed that all of us are also very keen into reaching out, helping out, doing making a difference, and I think it's just very innate with us. It's also like this. I don't know if it's a Filipino culture. I think it's just a human culture wanting to be able to help others. It's just maybe because in some low income economies we see it more, the need for it, right? So because in more industrialized economies, or more higher income economies, they're already kind of mobilized, they have the government to help them, and we're getting there. We need just to get started, and I'm pretty sure a lot of work has been done already, so those I don't think it's been wasted. It's just it takes time to achieve what we want. I mean, at least in fairness, like all our children in the Philippines are kind of well educated. It's just there's something needs to be done between education and going to the real world, and if it's equipment that's missing, um, yeah, even resources, it's getting there. And I like the idea with the laptops. I also think it's not just for kids. I also had this idea to um, donate laptops to working mothers, or mothers who are working from home or who can't work because they have to take care of the children, and then they just needed a laptop to start something online. I have discussed that with a friend, so maybe that's also something, that correlated laptop for moms and kids or something. It's, again, it's ambition, it scares you, but once it's inside your head and resides in your head, I think we can do anything, whether it's being a keynote speaker or achieving our roadmap, or being a really, really advanced programmer, or just making our loved ones happy. I think that's very important. Arla, you want to talk about your ambition as a final thing?
Okay. So for me, I really don't have ambition. I don't even know what's gonna be in a year or so, because I'm just that kind of person. But I love to set goals, and if ever I set goal, I will achieve it no matter what. I'll do anything to do it. So yeah, that's it for me. It's just whatever happens.
I think that's also very important to recognize, right?
Mm.
Sometimes this very high powered, I don't know, society that we have where we kind of over like micromanage our schedules, our life, our plans. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So also in tech, if you're getting into tech and you're kind of in if you're a DevOps board, of course it helps well if you put all your tasks in there. But just so realize in an agile world, you're bound to underestimate things, or maybe forget about things, or not being able to think ahead, way ahead, and just live in the present and enjoy that, appreciate that, what you have, and not think so much, or at least over obsessed with success, because maybe you're already succeeding in your where you
Mm.
are. And it's important to also appreciate that also in tech, because who among you um, deployed something or run something or achieved something, but then weren't really happy about it. It's like, I could do more with this, and then you end up not sleeping because you still has to fix it and you have to make it better, that you sacrifice your own health. Who did that?
Because sometimes you're
Oh.
just
Yeah, but that's very typical. So you always
Yeah.
have to remember to also take care of yourself when
So
you're in this.
there's like a season of my software engineer life of like 24 hours sleep is for the week. So I tried that. But I'm learning as well the work life balance. So like working in an Australian company actually balances that season of my life. So they're more chill and laid back. So I'm learning as well the balance, and also this is like the fifth I think this is like the year that I'm kind of thinking about life more. So
Oh.
not no more no more roadmap. So I was like thinking about like more meaning to life. So I'm already happy where I am right now. So just I have many questions. So my questions in life.
Mm.
So yeah, putting more deeper meaning in life.
I guess for me, just I'm just lucky to have from the start a laid back company. So
Good for you.
Thank you. I don't know how to say that. It's just like Arla, and it's like, are you okay? Can you have a look at this? And it's late at night. No, we try to, Speaking of being laid back and ambition, so I think I just want to talk a little bit about, now it's weekend. It's July 4th in the US. What are you planning to do this weekend? Let's talk about non-tech stuff before we close the session or we end the session.
I got my first ever plant.
Plant.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be plantita, they call it.
Ooh. Well, they call me the plant killer here, but I'm trying to also be ambitious and not to kill the plants. I just almost killed the tomatoes, but I brought it back. So good luck with your plant. You said plant, right?
Yes,
Plenty.
plant.
Planting, right? But you had a farm in Quezon. So
No,
you
I
have
mean indoor plant.
indoor plants. Okay. Well, that's hard to kill. So I'm going to be surprised if you kill those. Okay. What about you, Adrienne? Now it's kind of late there. I feel sorry, but what's the plan for the weekend?
Oh, well, it's just my husband and I, and we're gonna try our hand at making our own ribs, like a real 4th of July
Oh,
celebration. So just that. So it's gonna be interesting tomorrow. We're gonna marinate it, cook it, see how it tastes, and then yeah, just enjoy staying at home, of course.
yeah. Oh my God. Now I got hungry from that. We also make ribs here, and we have a smoker.
No, yeah.
We used to have that in an apartment, and it used to really annoy the neighbors because we were just smoking. But now we moved to a house, so that's a good idea for 4th of July. I didn't think about that. Jonah, what are you doing this weekend?
Let's see, it's raining right now, but if the weather permits today or tomorrow, I will do maybe gardening, because we have I like gardening, so I plant from seeds. So from seeds till it grows like a flower or vegetable. So recently I got 6 seeds of malunggay, kalamungay, and some few okras. So they after 1 week after trying to put it like an incubator thing, they have started to grow like 6 inches or something. So I'm trying to take care of it and see if I get a lot of malungays. And then I also have alugbati. So I wish I could share. We can do Filipino food party here, but maybe
You'll be the
someday.
supplier for the
Yeah,
Filipino market there in
yeah,
Sweden.
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because these things I can't get here. Those are, well, okra now I can get, but
Yes.
malunggay.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a lot of alugbate. It's big like that, alugbate. So you can,
Wow.
yeah. So I like gardening and planting from seeds, even though the summer is short here in Sweden, as also in Denmark. But I try my. It's like one of my hobbies this way because our jobs we sit a lot on the computer, so it's like also finding balance that we don't get so over ambitious and so overwhelmed with what to do. So we have to find time with our families, our hobbies. So gardening is one of my hobbies, and if the weather also permits, I would like to do some driving. So we have a new car, so I want to like driving. So like so just driving and maybe go somewhere, take photos. I like nature, so I like taking pictures and just like capture moments person. So yeah. So and also this event collaboration with you girls. It's like it's part of my weekend, so it's like a first time experience for me. So I'm very glad that it went well. I was nervous in the presentation, but I'm very honored and glad to be invited to talk with
You
you.
did really great, and that's not gonna be the last time. I'm gonna chase you. We're gonna chase you and pull you
Yeah,
in. So,
yeah.
and yeah, like, what about you? Any plans?
I don't have plans for the weekend, so
That's good. Think of that.
like for the first time in my life that my schedule is not full. So
That's good. That's the work-life balance.
Good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
enjoy it.
finally. So I'm really, I mean, I'm really enjoying like like doing less, like you know,
Mm.
having time to like, oh no schedule really, like okay. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a breather. That's a breather for me. So I just bought a new oven toaster. So I'm expert buy one take one in SNR. So
Ah,
only 700 pesos. It's so cheap. So I got one, and
maybe we
I'm
can build an IoT thing up with your
Yeah.
toaster
out of
and
that.
build.
Why not? And also
Why not?
monitoring your plants.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's gonna be cool.
You
But
know,
also with the
the
toaster,
more
I don't really know how to kind of perfect that thing. Even if it's
yes,
in the same setting, like it's on three, sometimes it's burnt, sometimes it's not. So it's really
yeah, yeah.
so
You know,
unprecise.
I tend to be agile as well
Yeah.
in my
But
approach to this. Like trial and error, perfecting the avocado toasty that I'm doing.
I know what you mean.
Uh,
Yeah.
interesting times. Like this is the only year that I learned to cook. So I learned to cook sinigang, yeah, with my mom. So
Ooh. Yeah, so you guys are getting me hungry.
Yep.
Yeah, 2020,
yeah,
we learned a lot to being at home. I mean, it's a terrible situation, I think, but we can always pick up, the good stuff um, with everything that's happening around us. So let's remember that. And I really like your idea of no plan. So I think I will also try not to plan anything tomorrow. Today, I have to.
Mm.
Today, actually, I just want to go to the city and buy. Speaking of food again, I want to buy tuna or salmon for. I want to make sushi tonight, like from scratch.
Mm.
So that's my goal. And I wanna. The last time I made sushi was okay, but I realized the way they handle it. It's so gentle because when I did it, it looked like I don't know mashed sushi or something. It doesn't have that perfect shape I wanted. So I think tonight I'm gonna try to perfect that, and then maybe just walk around. It's also raining out here, but we need a lot of art on the wall because we just moved here, and that's the only thing that I'm really missing. So maybe walk around in Lopemagel, which is like the thrift shops in Copenhagen, and look for artworks and that. But I'm actually on the lookout for Filipino artworks as well. So I just don't know where to get that here, but maybe the next time when I'm in the Philippines, I would really like to get or buy some Filipino artworks to put on the walls. Yeah, so
Yeah.
very exciting non-busy weekend for us. That's really good. And I know that you ladies also, of course, had to put so much time, and now it's been almost 4 hours here using your weekend, your Friday, your Saturday, very early Saturday morning just to be here. So thank you with all my heart for joining. I also want to thank my colleague. I think he left, Eldel. He's been helping out a lot with all the purplish graphics around that you've seen. It's so nice. So he helped a lot around that. So thank you, Eldel, for doing that. And also, before we end, I'm gonna try to add my screen, but I'm gonna lose this focus because I lost my second screen. I just wanted to remind everyone to first of all to send us your feedback. We really need it so that we can make events like this. I'm sure you like this one. I'm very, very happy on how it turned out. It's the way I imagine it. Our speakers are so great, and the technical talks are so informative. And then also this conversation about our identity and our being Filipina and our roles in tech. It's so very inspiring. It's something that I would love to share to the entire world. So please send us your feedback so we can, repeat the same. If you like it, of course, repeat the same event or make more events for you. But also just for us to hear what else would you want to learn. So again, in appreciation of your time and effort, I would like to just give you this. I don't know if you know about the Azure Heroes badges, but Microsoft has this program where they try to, or where they kind of show a token of appreciation to people who's been contributing to the community, who's been learning Azure, who's been sharing their knowledge, and has been doing a lot to kind of create this kind of really open community. And one of my very good friends here in Denmark, she's also from Microsoft, and she started out this Azure Heroes program. And some of them are very limited, some like inclusive leaders you can or content heroes. So you can find more information about Azure Heroes in the Microsoft website. I would link it later on. But for our speakers today, Sherry, also with the help of Sherry, I would like to give you an award, which was this Azure Hero badge for kudos. These are given to those who demonstrate great community spirit, teamwork, passion, and more. So you can collect as many as you can, and I'd like to give this to our amazing, wonderful speakers, ladies, for today. Thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, I guess we're closing here. By the way, that one guy who said that he's eating Jollibee, maybe I will, if you are,
I know the guy.
yeah, I got Jollibee. What was that? Was that burger patties or something? I'm not sure if you can order the patties, but I got
I
kind of,
think it was Neil. Ah, yeah,
yeah,
Jollibee Burger
where
Patty.
are you?
That
Here.
he was my
Really?
colleague.
Neil, are you still there?
Eh,
Because of that, if you can send me your address on my Twitter, if you feel comfortable about it. I'm not gonna stalk you, but then I can also maybe send you some Jollibee package, and then you can share that with your family.
I know him. He's the
Oh,
one
you
who
know
replaced
him.
me in my last project in Accenture.
Okay. So you just give me his address. We can send some more Jollibee to him, and then maybe you can send
Congrats.
a picture, and then yeah, congrats, you want some Jollibee burger patty, like without the bun, just the
Adrienne,
patty. No
Adrienne,
carb,
I'm
no
sending
carb
Lumpia
diet.
earlier.
Yeah.
No
So thank
carbs.
you for joining. Thank you to our audience, and have a good weekend, everyone. And
Bye.
see you next time in our next Azure User Group Manila meetup. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice day.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.